Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the Derick Leg podcast. Welcome to the vault. We got a guest today that probably knows me better than anybody than maybe my wife and my mom. And maybe even not my wife. Today we've got a guest. His name is Alex Stout. How's it going, man?
Hey, what's up?
This has been a long time coming. I knew that I would have you kind of in my back pocket ready to roll when like you were saying, get some practice in and get you in here.
Right.
I mean, I knew you were ready to go from day one. So finally got you in here. This could really go anywhere. Like I said, I mean, we know each other probably better than almost everybody else.
Well, and the thing about our friendship, too, is like we're always really doing something. So, I mean, we have time to talk when we're in the middle of a project. So this is the first time there's no agenda. We're just sitting down, just shooting the breeze.
We've been running around together, sophomore, junior year?
Yeah, and it's crazy to think about what year that was, like, 05, and that was a long time ago.
I mean, we're getting close to 20 years. That's crazy.
That's a special anniversary.
Yeah, take me out.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you knew Alex in high school, you knew me. If you knew me in high school, you knew Alex. We were joined at the hip. And I don't even know how it started. I think just one day we were like, hey, dude, let's hang out. Let's do something after school. And I'm pretty sure I went to your house first. And what I remember, and I could be wrong, was you had four-wheelers. And I was like, heck yeah, dude, let's get on those four-wheelers. Let's go ride them. And back then it was all like raw land behind your house in Middleton.
Oh, yeah.
And so we just go buzz those things around for a couple hours.
Yep.
And then I remember you saying another early story. We were riding four-wheelers and you took me up the hill. And you were like, hey, man, like my family, this is all my family's property and we're building a house up here. And I'm like, okay, guy. Like, because I just figured it was like BLM. I didn't even know that was like private land.
Right.
And so we end up riding up there. And I'm kind of like doubting you in the back of my head the whole time. And then we roll up on this huge hole in the ground. And I'm like, what is this? And you're like, this is where our house is going to be. You're like, my dad's building this house. And I think that's probably one of the first stories I remember about you. And I'm like, oh, dude, this guy's for real. Like, he's not just pulling my leg trying to be cool over here.
Oh, yeah, and that house was, I mean, up on the top of that mountain. There's nothing to get up there that's the same anymore.
Yeah.
Like, everything has changed. So even trying to tell that story to somebody, they wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And we actually built that house over, I want to say, the span of years.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't like it was something that got shot up in 4 months like typical house projects are in St. George right now.
Yeah, I mean, as long as I'd known you, it'd probably been at least 3 years, and you guys had started it before I even knew you.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it was funny. The only way to really get up there would be in a truck or a four-wheeler. Yeah. And you're telling me you're building a house, and I'm like, there's nothing up here. This is like dirt. Yep. And now it's blowing up.
Oh,
you guys have got
10s, 20s houses up there now.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Yeah. And it was funny in high school, we'd always have people come up because you guys had a pool, you had a hot tub first, and then you had a pool and a hot tub. And we'd be like, no, there's a dirt road. You just follow the dirt road. And people would call us, I'm at Roosh Machinery. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. And you're like, there's a dirt road. Yeah. And people would think we were lying to them.
Oh, yeah. And you get to the point where there's only 3 spots that you could be. And so it's like, hey, when you get to where your GPS says, just call me and we'll get you out there.
Yeah.
And then people think that, oh, where are you taking me? Are you taking me to a place to kill me? Or what's the story here?
You have like a first date girlfriend heading up,
up
this dirt road.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of good times on that property in that house. So I wrote a handful of things down, and usually what happens is I only hit 2 or 3 of these and we get down a rabbit hole and we've been an hour or 2.
There you go.
So we kind of just gone over the beginning, and then we went through high school. I mean, best friends together every day.
Oh, yeah.
And then, well, let's talk right now because there's a lot of stuff that you and I have in common right now. We both business owners. You've owned a couple different businesses the last 6 years.
Yeah, it's fair to
something
say.
like that. So you were a mechanic, so you graduated Wyotech, right?
Yep, 2012.
And then you went to Vegas.
Yep. Vegas for 2 years, stayed there, and then back home to St. George.
Yeah. And then you were running your own shop there for a while. And then you had this opportunity to get into the ice cream business.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So mechanicking was something that I graduated 2012, got out, and it was just the quickest access to making a career. I tried the whole college thing, didn't work out. College was just not for me. I think we're kind of similar in that instance.
100%.
And then I couldn't really pay anybody to work on my own truck, so I ended up having to do it. Found out I was pretty good at it, and got into the career, started making money with it. Worked at CarMax in Vegas, and then my dad got sick, so then it was time to come home. Bounced through a couple of jobs, got into my own thing, and it was mainly just because if you have a friend that's a mechanic, he's the best friend to everybody because everybody's got at least one car.
Sure.
And cars always have problems. So I was the best friend to everybody that needed car advice, and so I was busy enough that I was just able to go out and do it all myself. And that my own shop kind of ended because I was at a point to where it was like, I can only do this for so long with where I'm at. You're almost forced to grow as a business, or you just kind of recede and it just doesn't work out. And so I had an opportunity to join a shop here locally in town, and that only worked out for about a year. And then I had a family friend that was the ice cream man. He was looking to get out of the business, and I mean, things just lined up perfectly to where I was able to sneak in and buy the business from him and start selling ice cream.
Yeah. It was nice. I always joke about this with you, and I was never with cars what you are now, but I was always the guy that everyone called about cars, and a lot of the times I didn't know the answer, but I knew something about something, and they would call me. And finally, when you came back to St. George, people would call me about stuff, and I'm like, I don't know, dude, call Alex. And that was like one of the best times of my life that I could get away from everybody's car problems.
Well, and the funny story about that is like when, because you've had Tyson on here before, there's a story that he loves to bring up just to rub it in my face, that it took me when we were in high school longer to change the oil on my truck than it did for him to install a new radio in my truck. So like I was down there trying to figure everything out, and he had the radio pulled, rewired, new one on, everything was done, and I'm still cracking the bolt for the oil pan. And he'll rub that in my face the rest of my life. But that was the story in high school. And then college just didn't work out, so then it became the car thing. And then, it was just everybody calls me. It's like, oh, yeah, just call Alex. It's easier to figure
my
it
own
out
family. My brothers will call me, and I'm like, just call Alex. I'm like, I don't know,
just
call
easier.
Alex.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even like, well, I would think it would be something like this. I'd just be like, I don't know, dude.
Right.
I'm like, I'm a part-time safe salesman now. I don't know. You got to call Alex.
Yeah, exactly.
Your family's extremely popular here. The last name.
Yeah.
So the last name, you guys basically ran Hurricane for decades. And then your dad came out to St. George. He's really the only one in St. George, right?
Yeah, we're the only one that defected from Hurricane. So.
Yeah,
we're
Starbelly Sneetches, man.
Exactly. Nobody followed us, though. That was the thing, is everybody still stayed over there.
Yeah. So he came out here, was still known by a lot of people, helped out a lot of people doing cement. I remember we were high school cruising around, and I don't remember why you got pulled over, speeding, or I don't remember. You got pulled over once, and this cop rolls up, and you give him your license, and he's like, oh, you're Ron's kid. And you were like, yeah. And he's like, he just poured my cement on Saturday. Tell him thanks. And then and he's like, see you guys later. And we rolled. And I was like, hold the phone. Like, what's going on here?
It was probably that S10 we were cruising around after he crushed it with the loader. That was quite the truck.
What was that like? Because we had very different childhoods.
Oh, yeah.
Very different, even into high school. What was it like being, and he was very dominant, your dad was. What was that like growing up? And you worked for him for a long time running dirt. He owned the pit. I guess we've always called it the pit. Is that what you call it? Okay.
Yeah. Rock garden.
Yeah.
You know?
What was it like working with him every day, and not even like him specifically, but just for your family, for your dad?
Well, that's always a hard thing, because like whenever you ask somebody about, can you work for family? Some people say yes, some people say no, right? there's instances of people working with their wives for forever.
Yeah.
But I've always thought, and I was a kid, I didn't know anything, but at the time, as a kid, I would think, okay, I have a mom and a boss. I don't have a mom and a dad. And so it got really annoying really fast because my dad was telling me what to do at work, telling me what to do when I got home. I just was kind of like, man, I need a break from you. And I didn't think that a job would, provide that for me because it was always just, hey, when you're done with school, I need you to go do this. And so we always thought that we were just kind of helping my dad out. And it was good. I mean, he taught me a lot of things that I probably wouldn't have noticed and probably wouldn't have gotten into. I mean, without him, obviously, but they're skills that I still use today.
Sure.
So yeah, it was a good experience all the way around.
I mean, when you went to Wyoming, I guess is when it would have been. I was going through my stuff with my dad, and a lot of the issues I was going, I guess I look at it as issues now, but at the time it was just my life, just dealing with what I was dealing with at home. And he would call me every now and then. And I think I've mentioned that on this podcast. I don't remember, but he would call me and be like, what are you doing? I need your help. I need another set of hands up here. And he would do it every couple of days for probably a month. And we got like pretty close. And I realized one day he was just doing that to check on me. Like, he didn't need me.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And in the moment, I'm like, come on, dude. Like, I got stuff to do too, Ron. Like, you need me to come up there and hold a tire for you, And he had his hands in everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
Everything. And, yeah, but, I mean, I've always, after I realized that years after he had passed, I've always thought back and been like, he was going out of his way to check on me and make sure I was okay. Well, and it's always meant so much to me.
Oh, yeah, and that's his way of doing that. And that's kind of how, like, our relationship is ran, is that his way of doing things was like, hey, I have a project. I probably don't need your help to finish it, but why don't we work on it together and we can chat about things?
Sure.
And I think it's kind of a great way of doing things, You
never
both get to accomplish something, But
I've never put that together, dude. That's totally, me and you.
That's exactly how we've kind of continued our relationship. Is like, hey, we have a project to do, then maybe we'll take an extra hour doing that project because we're BSing half the time. But still, that's just how we catch up.
That was part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, growing up around your house, it was like, I called your mom.
Right.
I mean, I was there all the time. And part of that was like to escape what I had going on at home. My dad was great. Even when we were in high school, he was great. Like his depression or how he functioned changed later.
Right.
But they were still like, my dad was very good at being a best friend and wasn't as good at like being a structured dad.
Yeah.
And so it was almost like I had a few dads in my life. 3 in particular, including yours, that it was like that structure for me. Mm-hmm. And like teaching me and all this stuff instead of like, and you need to be friends. You need to be some part of a friend to your kids. I do believe that too.
Right.
But it was almost like your dad was like far right and my dad was far left.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember we were up at your house once, my dad and I, with your dad, and my dad, he said he was something like, "Hey man, we really enjoy having Alex around. He's a good kid, and he's complimenting everything about you." And my dad like stops and Ron's like, "Yeah, he's a good kid." And then my dad like stops and my dad's like expecting Ron to be like, "Yeah, we love having Derick around too."
Right.
Right. And your dad just like straight faces him like, "Cool, man. So can we get on to the next thing now?" I don't even remember what we were doing, but I always remember that.
Are we done talking? Because I got things to do.
I'm kind of busy.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad was business. That's all he was. And it was one of those that I ended up hearing a lot from other people, kind of how, and saying like how my dad loved me isn't the right way of saying it, but like he expressed to other people what he thought about his kids.
Instead of to you.
Yeah, instead of to us. And I mean, is it right? Is it wrong? Who knows?
Yeah. But that was his way of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I get it. And it's one of those, as a young kid, you learn, like, with now that I have kids, like, I try to show a little bit more love and affection to my kids. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, maybe later on in life, I started to realize, oh, well, my dad showed me he needed me by the things I helped him do.
Sure.
And it was that simple.
Yeah. You're getting into, we'll kind of switch gears here and start moving. I just kind of wanted a backstory and how we kind of grew close and everything. But a couple years ago, well, I guess it's been 6 or 7 years ago now, I would think, we started getting into handguns and started getting into some shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And we went out to the range one day, and there were these, and we're intimidated. I'm intimidated. I guess I don't know how you felt.
Oh, yeah.
But I was super intimidated. And I was the holster guy for about a year or two at this point. And so, in being in that business, everyone will come up and they automatically think that I'm like amazing with a handgun. And it's just not the case. I mean, like, I can hold my own, but I mean, we'll get to it, but like, I'm not you. Right. And so we show up to the range, and there's these girls that I would imagine they were like maybe 8 and 10 and 12.
Yeah, something in that range.
And their dad. And I thought, okay, well, let's group up with them. It's like, and I think their dad offered, hey, they can run with us, because you kind of had to go with someone that was experienced at the time.
Yeah.
And so Jason is his name, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Jason's like, hey, you guys can run with us. And we're like, cool. Yeah, dude, we'll jump in with you. Like, no pressure at this point, right? Like, this dude's not going to show up as little daughters, and we'll be able to hang, you know. Well, we roll up to the first course, and I think one of us shot first. But I think Jason went first and kind of showed us. Either way, those girls stepped up to shoot. And at the time, they were probably the best people that ran that day. Like, they were flying through, and you and I are looking at each other like, dude, we messed up. Like, we should not be here.
Right.
We should have picked someone else.
Well, and even the backstory to that is, like, we shot with a husband and wife combo the first time we went out.
Right.
It's
That's
Jeremy
right.
and Kimber, and they're two really talented shooters. Like, if you ever follow the shooting world in St. George, like, we produce some of the really good competition shooters. And so we shot with them, and they showed us kind of what we were doing. Like, he was shooting kind of an array of things in 15, 20 seconds, and we're like 40.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the next time we go out there, we're like, whoa, that was really fun. Let's go out there. And so we get out there, and I think our exact thought process was this. We don't want to go with good guys again because we felt stupid. So there's a dad and his daughters.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we'll be able to, like, we should be able to go hang out with those guys. And sure enough, we couldn't.
Yeah, we got our trash handed to us.
And I think I'm pretty sure that this last weekend was nationals, and she's like the best lady in the country.
Oh yeah, she wins it all the time, right?
Yeah, they're multinational champions. Like, there's nobody that can hang with them.
I mean, it was soon after that they started getting sponsors.
Yeah, I think they were getting, like, from heavy gun manufacturers.
Yeah.
Like, they were shooting for Springfield.
Like real sponsors.
Oh, yeah.
Whether they had some before or not, I don't know.
Right.
But I think they might have had like berries and like Tactay, I think.
Yeah,
had
just some
stuff
local
on
guys.
them. Yeah. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they're like rocking brand new Springfields, and they're rocking brand new holsters, and they've got jerseys. And I'm like, what the heck? And then and I'd never even been exposed to any of that on that side.
Oh, yeah.
And I was going 100% to push holsters.
Right.
Like, I wasn't going because I was like, I'm going to get so good at this.
Right.
And when we got to the point where, like, and we were pretty even.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think I had functioned a handgun more than you had.
Right.
But as far as like just the timing, the course, we were pretty even.
Mm-hmm.
And then it wasn't maybe a month after that you were kicking my butt. And you had put a lot more time into it.
Oh, yeah, I dove into it at first.
Yeah. And we'd win a couple of times. And I think we were trying to go every other week, if I remember. And again, I made this flashy holster. It's like zombie green and all this stuff, trying to get people's attention to it so I could kind of pitch my business to them. And then Alex is over there just getting better and better and better and better. And now you've shot a couple real competitions now. Like, I wouldn't call Tuesday Night Still a competition, but how are you doing with that? Where are you at with that?
the league that I shoot in is kind of falling apart, and so it's just really not fun to shoot that anymore. But
Which
then
is what?
USPSA.
Okay.
And it's kind of getting boring.
Yeah.
And so, but then like with COVID coming and everything, and like our range totally went through a total remodel, and this was planned even before COVID. So like there was almost no shooting in 2020. But I've gotten to the point where like and I started shooting for self-defense reasons. I'm like, if I'm going to carry a gun around with me, I'm going to be responsible and I'm going to know how to use it.
Yeah.
Because you start seeing some of these people that are like, I've got all these guns, and so I feel safe. And it's like, well, do you though? Like, can you really defend yourself with it? Or would you be better off with a spoon?
Yeah.
You know? And so like that was my mindset, is I want to know how to use this thing, whether it's for competition, whether it's for concealed carry, whether it's whatever. I want to know how to use a gun and properly. And it's the right word.
You just started with the Glock 19, Glock 17, right?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, because I didn't even really have like a range gun at the time. And so you were running a Glock 17. I was running your Glock 19.
Yeah.
And I know now I'm not a Glock guy.
Right.
So I actually own one Glock. I've never even shot it. Like I have it just to do holsters with.
Yeah.
And so we ran through that a little bit. It was very obvious that you had like a natural instinct to it, because you're sitting there running Glock 17 with maybe a trigger mod to it.
Yeah.
And there's these guys running $2,000 guns and you're hanging with them, if not beating them.
Yeah, on some stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And then we kind of moved through that, and then the range got redone, kind of threw the whole thing up. But they're starting back up now, right?
Yeah, we just shot the first match going back there. And so, yeah, it was one of the first kind of, I guess, major matches, like big matches that people traveled into. So we had people from Arizona, Vegas, all traveling in to shoot.
Well, and we have, like the Williams sisters, are they both winning everything?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because I can't even tell them. I don't even know, like, I know their names, but I don't know which one is which one.
Right.
And then there's LeGrandis, right? And then there's you. I'm trying to think. There's a few people that are like number one in the world that are here.
So Justine, so they just shot, and it's called PCC National, so it's the pistol caliber carbine. Justine's from here. She took first. There's Linda, and I can't pronounce, Turnbull, I think is her last name. It's Max's girlfriend.
Okay.
She took third. Jaleese Williams took fourth. So, and Max took first on the men's, like, overall.
Uh-huh.
So there's 4 people from Southern Utah that just went and shot a countrywide match and won.
That's bananas.
It's nuts. They even did a 2-gun, so a pistol and a rifle, and there was, I think 3 divisions. I mean, 5 of them were from Southern Utah.
Yeah.
Like, so Southern Utah produces some really good shooters. We had a place called Tactical Performance Center that was here, and Ron Avery was running it, and he was a guru with guns. I mean, that's what he lived, like performance shooting. And so that was based out of here. So you had people flying in from all over the country to come shoot with us. And so I kind of got a part-time job with them just because I think I lived here. And so I was just kind of an extra body to throw in there. And I understood what they were talking about. And so that's kind of why all the shooters kind of came here, is because we had a world-class range. They had national events here. And I think that's where everybody just kind of moved here after a while and started shooting.
And with TPC, that kind of groomed a lot of these people too. Like, did the Williams sisters do much with TPC? Yeah,
they did quite a bit with TPC. I think it was a stepping stone for a lot of people, because Ron died, and it kind of moved into a different direction. So I think it was a stepping stone for a lot of people, because I think that's ultimately what drew people here. And then it was a stepping stone for something else that they ended up doing. TPC is still in existence, and a guy named Rawson's running it, and he's doing excellent. It's just not based out of St. George like it used to be.
Glenn was the other guy I was trying to pull his
Glenn
name
Wong,
out of.
yeah.
I was trying to pull his name out of my head, and I couldn't. I'm picturing him, and you got to shoot Mo better. That's what he always says. So yeah, dude, we've kind of gotten over this whole shooting thing together. We've kind of bonded through it. I've made I think you run some mag pouches that aren't ours anymore, but we built all of your original gear, all of your holsters, everything.
And I was kind of the test rig for everything, because I think I have the original of every holster that we made.
Yeah.
So the original competition holster, the original appendix carry holster, the original appendix with a mag pouch carry holster, like
That's
all
right.
the originals are ones that I made you. I think I made you make me, because I started getting more into how everything was going, and then it's just kind of blossomed into.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I was so busy just doing the basic stuff that the stores want that I didn't get to venture out and do anything, or even do anything for myself.
Right.
I mean, when I started it, I think I had one concealed carry holster, and I'd made thousands of holsters before I'd ever made myself a second one.
Right.
And then the competition one, like, I only made that so we had something to go shoot with.
Right.
But I believe I made yours first, and then I kind of bettered mine off of it. And so, you were the test subject on all of that stuff. One thing I do want to talk about on here, and if it's, I don't think it's too personal because you're pretty open with everything, but so you're married, divorced, and then remarried, right? And I know when your divorce was kind of starting or going through, or you guys were kind of trying to figure out what was going on, was when your dad was diagnosed. Let's talk a little bit about how the divorce, and we don't need particulars or anything, but just kind of your mindset and what you were going through, because it's so prevalent in today's world. And even with all of our friends, I think you handled it better than any of them. And I don't want anyone to be mad at me for saying that. Right. I just think it's the truth.
Yeah, of the worst situation, well, almost the second worst situation in the world to happen to you, I think, I handled it okay.
Yeah.
Because, having a family member die is probably worse than getting a divorce.
Sure.
And
you had both of them in a month?
About
a couple
6 months
time? Yeah.
So, and this is where, I don't have feelings. And so, my wife makes fun of me because, I don't cry. I'm really logical. So when stuff like this happens, the divorce was the worst thing that happened to me at the time. So this was, my rock bottom, my low, my everything. And so I got divorced. And you'll have to tell me if we need to go into this, because, mine's very structured on, okay, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. But the divorce happened. Basically, that just wasn't working. So it morphed into, and I think the timeline, I'm trying to remember this back now because it's been 8 years. I was down at CarMax, and I think it was 2 months later, my dad was having issues with his back. And so we'd go, get adjusted, and we had an uncle that was doing chiropractic stuff, and so we'd go get adjusted there, and my dad's back just kept screwing with him, and so he went and finally got it diagnosed, and he had stage 4 lung cancer. So it was something that dude, it went from nothing to dude, this is the worst it could get.
Yeah, my back's bothering me to, dude, we're giving you a year to live.
Yeah, we got to start setting up chemo, all that kind of stuff. So for me, and see, now I'm moving on to my dad from the divorce, but so, and that's how, that's how it ends up working. But as far as divorce goes, because it's really prevalent now, and you don't want to say it's because we've been on lockdown and everybody has to spend more time with their spouses, because you would hope that, if you got married to them, you'd want to spend time with them. So now that you're forced to, it's everybody's getting divorced. Anyway, so the divorce is you get to the point when you're starting to feel these things, and you have somebody that you've devoted all this time, and hey, this is for, in our religion, this is for time and all eternity. You know, this isn't until death do you part type of thing that you see in the movies with marriage.
Yeah.
And so when you have somebody that says, okay, I want to end this, like, I don't want to be with you anymore, that's really kind of a kick in the butt, to say the least. And so it makes it to the point where, like, I think I told this to my mom because we were on the way to the sand dunes. And I said, you know, I understand why people drink. I understand why people need the release to get into a different world, to just kind of get out of it. And I told her that, and she kind of, like, and of course, like, when somebody tells you that, you're always worried about them, you know?
Well, and everything you were going through. And
yeah, you're just like, well, okay, well, that's the easiest thing. And then people lose their lives to drugs and alcohol and all that kind of stuff. And so my parents were worried about me. But my biggest thing is, like, when I got divorced, I took like a day to basically think about it, because, like, it's rock bottom at that point. So you take a day, and, like, my solution from this, and, like, my thought was like, okay, well, if the divorce happens, it's a two-way street. Like, there's feelings that have been lost in something that I did that was bad that caused it. So how do I need to fix it? Because one of the things my sister, I think I heard it from my sister first, is like, it sucks to suck, and I don't like to suck. Yeah. So, like, I don't like life to suck.
Sucks to suck.
It sucks to suck, you know? And so the easiest thing to do is, like, okay, take everything through a process, right? If something sucks, how are you going to make it better? Or do you want to continue to suck? Because I don't.
Sure.
So my overall feeling behind that was, like, it's God's way of saying, like, dude, get your crap together. It's time to get your crap together and figure out what's up. Because I wasn't going to church as properly as I needed to. I wasn't living the way I needed to live. And so it was my way of saying, I think that was God's way of saying, like, dude, it's this isn't the right path for you. And, you know, you start to live right, you'll get on it.
So, I mean, basically, I've not been divorced. I hope I never do.
Oh, of course, right?
That kind of sounded like I haven't been divorced yet.
Yeah.
That's not what I meant. It seems like when you have things that happen, whether it's divorce, death, losing your job, sickness, whatever it is, like, you've got to figure out, I mean, you have that pain, feel the pain. Mm-hmm. I mean, and you did that like that, oh, yeah. You know, but normal people who have feelings and tear ducts and cry.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like it's okay to have that feeling, and it's okay to feel that way. I believe, I'm no therapist, but I believe it's okay to feel like that. But at some point you got to get up and dust your boots off and figure out how to push forward.
Yeah.
Because you can get in that hole, and you can be in that hole for a long time. And I personally know people that are, and I you know, you keep hoping that they're going to get out of it, but there's nothing you can do for them. They have to get to that point where they can move forward. And so where you got out of that point fast, it was still like the moving forward part. It's like, well, what's the alternative? Like, I have to move forward now.
Well, yeah, I mean, to say it simply, like, you're going to continue to suck if you don't move forward and take the next steps.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's from that you just think, okay, well, I don't feel like I'm meant to be alone. And so some people can take that as like, okay, well, I'm just going to go back. I'm going to start dating. I'm going to, try to work on me. I need some me time. I'm like, no, I don't need me time. Like, I feel like I was good with where I was, but there was certain things that I lacked as far as communication and relationships go that led to where we're at now. And so processed it, went through it, made my mental checklist. Okay, hey, when we go through another relationship, this is the things we're going to cover before this happens. And
yeah,
I moved on.
Like, took a little humility, took a little awareness, took a little bit of all that to kind of figure it out.
Well, and I say that, and I mean, like, you have somebody that says something like that about a divorce, and there's probably people out there that are just like, dude, my divorce was the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And it was for me too. Like, it wasn't like 3 days later I was high-fiving people and going out on dates, like, this was a few months later I was finally able to get my crap together and go talk to some other girls.
Well, and you guys didn't have kids.
No.
So I'm sure that makes it easier.
as sad as it was a piece of paper we printed out on the internet.
Well, that's what I was just gonna
and
say.
Filed.
Like you guys
that
probably just split
sucks.
things up between each other, and she got her car, you got yours.
She took the couch and the bed frame and left me the bed, and
right.
Sayonara. That was basically it.
I mean, because you guys were still so early in your life that you were still building all of that, and so there wasn't a whole lot of things to split up. But like, I mean, just say now, like me and Amanda, or you and Taylor, like we have houses, we got cars, we have kids, we've got. I mean, it'd be a lot more complicated.
Oh yeah, I've got 2 employees right now that are going through divorces. That they've actually got together, so they're dating now, and they're trying to divorce their exes. And the things they tell me that they go through is like, you just got to look at them and just be like, I don't envy your situation. Like, I've been divorced, but that's not even a tenth of what you guys are dealing with.
Sure.
And so, like, I don't envy it, but whatever you need, just ask for help. That's the biggest thing. Is just ask for help if you need it. Because, dude, it sucks, man. That's like when life hands you that deck of cards, and that's what you have to deal with. There's no other point to just try to move forward with what you got and try to make better with what you have. Because, I mean, are you going to just continue going down this road?
Yeah.
So that's what I kind of try to tell them. It's just like, get through the situation, do whatever you got to do, make the next best decision. And, all my quotes and stuff and like my, what do you call it? Like, not its spiritual thoughts, but inspirational thoughts. They all come from Disney movies, but the rocks on Frozen, dude, they always say, when, and I'm going to butcher this, but like when the future is unknown, the only thing you can do is make the next right choice. And it's like, well, yeah, that Disney movie was actually right. So I'm glad I sat and watched it with my kids.
It's true though. That's what I mean. Like, what's the alternative? Move forward.
Yeah, or just continue to live in pity and just make bad decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know people that are continuing to do that today.
Yeah.
So do you want your life to be that way?
Well, so people will say stuff to me and I say, what's the alternative? And it's like, because I want to, let's say it out loud to ourselves. What's the alternative? And no one's going to be like, I'm just going to live in self-pity and make awful choices.
Right.
And so it's like, what's the alternative? Well, yeah, you're not going to go do all that stuff. So let's move forward. What's the alternative? Let's move forward.
Well, people don't spend enough time thinking, you know? How many people like seriously sit at home and just wallow in self-pity, and they're just like, everything happens to me. The worst things are the worst things that happen to me.
Sure.
And how can you live like that? We've got a long life to live.
Yeah.
Things can change within the span of months to a year, and you could catch your next opportunity, or are you just going to let it float by? So, I mean, I really feel like life's catching opportunities, and if you get an opportunity, whether it's bad or good, try to make the most of it, learn what you got to learn from everything, and then move on.
Yeah. So after that, you moved back to St. George, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I went down there with you once and helped you clean up the last few things and bring it back to St. George, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Because I'd been down there for some reason, and I think it was that. Anyway, so you moved back to St. George. We kind of started running together a little bit. We were talking a little bit. And then your dad gets diagnosed.
Yeah, he got diagnosed while we were
still in
Vegas.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to plan all that. I was dating my current wife at the time. So it was like I got divorced. Oh, wow. Actually thinking about it, that was pretty quick. Because like we split things up October, and then I've started, like, the divorce was final Christmas Eve, and that's, like, I was, like, talking to my wife, the current wife at the time.
When you guys were in the singles ward together?
Yeah, we met in the singles ward. And then the whole time, like, my dad was diagnosed. Like, I found out probably November. I can't remember exactly. But, yeah, he got diagnosed with cancer, and it was one of those things, like, we were going to fight it and see where we were. But it was like, yeah, October this happened, November this happened. And then I think it was, I want to say January, February or something, I moved back home, started my job with my uncle at the car lot in Hurricane. And then it was 4 or 5 months after that, my dad passed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, October to June.
Yeah. Well, and in my side of it, like, I knew he was having some back problems. I knew because I was helping him with some things, and he would complain about his back, but I didn't think anything of it.
Right.
I mean, for a long time, your dad in my eyes was like Superman. Like
Could do no wrong.
well, yeah, dude. And he was like a lot stronger than he looked. He did a lot. He worked 18-hour days, 12-hour days. Like when I was with him, dude, he was working all the time.
Yeah, if he was up, he was working.
Yeah. And so I remember I was sitting there putting my shoes on, getting ready for one of the mail routes. It would have been Apple Valley at the time. So I'm sitting on my stairs putting my shoes on, and you called me like, I mean, this would have been like 7:30 in the morning or something. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And so I like answered. I'm like, what's up, man? And you're like, dude, my dad's probably going to want to tell you, but he just got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I was like, what?
Right.
And you were like, yeah, dude, he went and got his back checked out, stage 4 lung cancer. And I was like, I didn't know what to say. I think my initial reaction was, dude, are you okay? But like, I know how you dealt with things because I've known you forever. And so I was like, are you doing all right? And you're like, yeah, I mean, we're just kind of going from here, seeing what we can figure out.
Next step?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like, dang, man, that's crazy. And I think it had been a couple of days. He had called me, hey man, I need you to help me with this thing up here. And so I was like, all right, dude, I'll be up there. And I knew what was coming. Right. And so we get up there and he sits me down on the couch. He's like, hey, I got to talk to you real quick. Just got to run something by you. So I sit down and he tells me, and I like, even though I already knew, it was like I still had all the emotions hit me then,
Right.
And so I started crying, and I was like, well, this is like something you can, like, you're going to fight it though, right? Like you're going to be okay. And he's like, I'll probably die.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, yeah, but there's like a shot, like there's something they can do. And he's like, I'm okay with it, man. I'm going to die. And I was just like, what? And he's like, I'm going to fight it. They're going to do some medications. We're going to do chemo. We're going to do these things. But I'm at peace with it, man. I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And I remember like I gave him a hug, and he was like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm not the one with stage 4 cancer.
He asked you if you're okay. He's like, okay, buddy. Oh yeah.
And then we went and worked out on the toy hauler or whatever it was. I think we were helping him do something with the trailer. I don't remember.
Well, and that's what's crazy is he was still doing stuff.
I know.
It's like you get this diagnosis and he's like, well, I mean, I've got stuff I got to do today. So is that it?
Yeah.
Like, are we done for the day, or what's going on?
And yeah, so then it had been a few months, and he ended up passing. And you and I started getting, we were talking pretty often and started hanging out again and started everything. And I remember the funeral, dude. It was like, I was working the post office then. I wasn't on the contract route anymore. I was actual post office. And I told my boss, I'm like, hey man, like this mentor of mine passed away. Is there any way I can get Thursday off or whatever day it was? And he's like, no.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, this dude is like a second dad to me. Like, I kind of need this day off. And he's like, I can't give it to you off. And I said, I will quit this job today.
Right.
If you don't figure out how to work that day off. And now, like, being a business owner and having employees, I'd have been like later, like if I was him,
Oh yeah.
And so we kind of talked for a second, and I'm really close with that boss still today.
Yeah.
And he said, well, dude, we can probably work something out, but are you okay? What's going on? And so he kind of like talked to me about it, kind of stepped out of the boss role and into the friend role. And him and I talked for a second, and he's like, all right. He's like, I need you to come in early, sort your out, start delivering. And then when you need to leave, just roll. Like, come back, drop your car off, get in your car and go. But then I need you to come back after and finish your route. And so I believe I came back, switched cars, drove straight home, changed, went to the funeral. And then I didn't even go to the burial. So they did it in Hurricane. Mm-hmm. And so I had actually drove back, picked up the mail vehicle, and as I was going back out to the route, I passed like
You
the
saw us
hearse
sitting
and
there.
everything
Yeah.
coming. And I was like, oh, I'd actually beat him out here.
Right.
And yeah, then I finished my route, and I had talked to you a few times. Yeah, because Taylor was there. Taylor and I sat next to each other. And I don't know, man. It was just a weird time. And it was a weird time because, like, I knew you guys had accepted it and you'd moved past it. And, like, I hadn't even moved past it. And so, like, being around you, I'd be like, dude, are you good? Everything okay? Because, like, I wasn't okay.
Right.
You know, but you're sitting there just like a pillar, like everything's fine. And I don't know. I'm glad that he was in both of our lives. And I think that, I mean, I also learned a lot from him. So when you said that, I was like, dude, that was a big thing for me too.
Well, and I remember like the funniest part from, there's nothing funny about a funeral, so I shouldn't say that. But I remember the one thing I remember from the funeral, because like you said, we've accepted it. The one thing I was like remembering the most was I had to get to the point where I was comfortable hugging people, because I hate hugging people.
Yeah.
I have one hug, and only my wife gets that one hug, because hugging other people is just not for me. And so I think the one thing I remember from the funeral is I was like, you know what? We're hugging everybody. I don't care who it is. Nacho got a hug. You know, his wife got a hug. His kids got a, like, everybody was getting hugs. They were coming up trying to shake my hand, and we were just hugging it out. And that just, you know, kind of goes to show you my, not that I wasn't sad, but it was just, I don't know. I don't see the world in I think I'm unique in that way, that I just don't see the world in something that I need to sit there and be emotional about.
Yeah. Well, you mean you're lucky. I wish I was more like that.
Yeah. I mean, it is nice, because, like, I don't wish that I would cry more. Like, that's just something that I don't think anybody really wants. But
Sure.
At the same time, it was kind of like, dude, your dad just died. Like, you're not gonna nothing? No.
Well, and it's like, I'm sure the people that didn't know you is like, dude, they're in like shock. Like, they don't know how to handle it. Where really, you guys that accepted it, and
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't know if moved on's the right word, but like, you had accepted it and you knew it was happening.
Yeah.
And he was really good at prepping that. Like, hey, this is happening. I'm gonna pass away.
Yeah.
And we need to figure out how to get our ducks in a row for that to happen. Basically.
Well, and even the craziest thing that like, yes, that sucks that it happened to me, but the thing that I look at is like how strong my mom was.
Yeah.
Because if you really think about it, like in how everything has gone down, cancer took my grandma. My little sister Paige got cancer, and then cancer took my dad. So, like, if there's anybody that should have just been a mess, it should have been my mom.
Sure.
But she was good.
Yeah.
You know? And then, obviously, like, my little sister Paige is, I think, kind of more on, like, me. And so she was more along the lines of, like, yeah, I've accepted it, and it's, you know, this is just what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just amazing to me, the kind of person and kind of strength my mom had going through it, because it's just like, dude, how many times can you see cancer do this to somebody?
Sure.
And all different kinds of cancer. And, you know, that's one thing that kind of like goes on my list, because like I have this mental list that I keep that when I get to the other side and I can ask God and I'll be like, what's up with this, man? You know, then he can explain it to me. But as of right now, it's just on the list. I don't need to worry about it.
You tuck that in your pocket and you'll ask that when you get up there.
Exactly. Don't need to worry about it for now. And maybe that's how I handle things emotionally, is I'm just like, well, can I do anything about it now? No. Does it need to go on the list? Okay. It's going to go on the list, and we'll worry about it when time comes.
I mean, it's a good way to look at it. I struggled a lot with things I can't control. I mean, I would get like depressed, not's the right word, but stressed, anxiety, whatever. And really within the last 5 years, I've been able to be like, all right, what's everything that I'm stressed about? I mean, I was to the point, I had stomach ulcers I had like throughout my life, and I would just go, what's everything I'm worried about? I'd write them all down. And then I'd be like, well, okay, I can't control that. I can't control this. And I'd start crossing things off. And then I'm like, okay, but if this happens, you need to react positive to it, and I'd write positive next to it. And then if this happens, I'd be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And I'd write whatever I was going to do to have a positive outcome, at least at the end of it. And then I'd whittle it down to where I had like 2 or 3 things that I could actually control.
Right.
And I did that exercise. I'd actually heard it. I think it was Tony Robbins, or it was somebody that I'd listened to. And it really brought my anxiety levels down. And it's made me be like not as reactionary to things.
Right.
And like I'm the guy, and I thought everybody did this, but my wife thinks I'm nuts. Like I'll have conversations in my head. Like if I have to deal with something that day, I'll sit there and have a conversation about it in my head, and I'll think about 50 different ways about how that conversation can go. And so it's like when I'm in that conversation, it's like I've had that conversation 10 times because like I literally have. Oh yeah, in my mind.
And then you end up talking to yourself, and so like if somebody walks in and they're like, "Oh, Derick's just talking to himself again." yeah, I've totally been there.
And like I've been like, "Well, that's how you prepare." Like everybody does that. And my wife's like, "Dude, nobody does that."
Yeah.
So my next thing we're going to talk about, we touched on ice cream. We touched on you taking over the ice cream business or buying the ice cream business. When you bought that, your first year is when Corona hit. What were your thoughts going into that? Because I remember what my thoughts were. Because you'd kind of talk to me about you were going to buy it, you were thinking about buying it, now you are buying it, and then your first really time to go out and make money with it. I mean, the government's shutting down, masks are on, you can't be out, essential businesses only, which is nonsense, right? I mean, what was your thought going into that? And what I want to transition that into is with any business in any part of time, you have to be able to be flexible. You have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to call an audible. You have to be able to do these things, and no matter what you're doing and what time period.
Right.
But maybe talk a little bit about going into that. And I know the struggles you're going through now with not even being able to find stuff.
Yeah.
But maybe touch on that a little bit.
So 2020 was one of those, so like everybody had those reservations about getting into business or doing anything. And I just sat there and was like, well, am I going to put my life on hold to make this decision? And my only thought was like, okay, what's really going to happen? I mean, you just touched on like you end up thinking through processes or conversations or like how certain things are going to go. And that ended up being kind of where I was. I'm like, okay, if something ends up happening based on the political climate and everything that's going on now, there's people that are going to be for it and against it. And it's not like they're just for it and like, hey, I disagree with you. It's a complete 180-degree opposite. So for me, I sat there and thought, okay, there's going to be people that still support us being normal and going out. Being locked in your house is not normal.
Sure.
And so I sat there and thought, okay, well, as long as we can still get stuff, because they weren't talking about lockdowns when I bought the business. So they were still talking like, hey, we just need to be safe. We need to wear these stupid masks. We need to do this.
Wash your hands.
Yeah, wash your hands for 20 seconds, sing the ABCs, all that kind of dumb stuff. So I'm like, okay, I can get behind that because, like, I don't want people giving me the flu, let alone this new, super bug that came from wherever.
Yeah, it was like, should we probably be washing our hands more? Yeah, that's probably not a bad thing to get behind.
It's a good idea.
Sure.
So, like, I was about it. And so the one thing that the guy that I bought it from kind of compared it to is like, dude, there's so many people that are against it and for it that it's going to be kind of like and I don't say this lightly, but like a 9/11 type of a thing where ice cream music and ice cream is normal. And if we're going through a pandemic of everything in our life changing, the sound of the ice cream truck is the sound of summer, of normal, of, hey, let's get outside. Mm-hmm. And so 2020 was actually great. Like there was no problems with 2020. Everybody was still working that could work, and everything was just flowing and ready. And so when they actually shut things down, they just took like a line of ice cream and said, we're not making these anymore. So I was able to say, okay, cool, no big deal. So we kept working.
Big sticks crossed off, not doing big sticks.
Not doing them. I'm like, okay, well, I don't need to sell them. Great.
Sure.
And so I just put all my trust in this guy because of where we were with family and stuff like that. I mean, if it would have been somebody that I met off the street, then yeah, I probably would have had a couple of second thoughts about it. But 2020 was great. We went out, and as far as buying the business goes, like I wasn't taking risks to do something. I don't care if it's buying a business or learning new skills or any of that kind of stuff. Taking the risk to do it was never an issue for me. So I was just like, okay, well, whatever we got to do to figure this out, let's just figure it out because I know this thing can make money. And I knew I had to get out of mechanics sooner or later, and because the only old mechanics you see can barely move. And they come home and sit in their rocking chair, and that's about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I did not want that.
Not your future.
So I was like, well, this is a little bit sooner than I wanted to, but maybe we, transition into this and go from there.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the deal went down, and we just started selling ice cream, and everybody was still out. California was on lockdown, so everybody that's right. That's the thing. California was on lockdown, right? But they weren't on lockdown to stay in the state.
Yeah.
So everybody was coming
here.
up to St. George to go to Zion because they're like, oh, we've got a mandatory, time off work and we're still getting paid.
Can't fly anywhere.
Yeah. They're just like, oh, we'll drive up to St. George and hang out. And so we had people everywhere. We were selling ice cream like crazy. And it was great. 2021 has been a horrible year for ice cream because just still nobody's working. It's the whole 15 days to stop the spread, and the worst part about that's the first 18 months.
Yeah,
you're just that is exactly what has happened. And nothing says the world is crazy when you can't buy a SpongeBob ice cream.
Yeah, dude, what's wrong with that, dude?
And dude, I went and tried to get SpongeBob ice cream today. Can't find it.
Nothing.
I was lucky to get 4 boxes from the third vendor I tried, and so. When it's out, it's out.
Yeah.
And hopefully I can find somewhere later.
Yeah, it was interesting when they were saying, I'm not sure if I'm talking straight. There we go. That's a little better.
Yeah.
It's interesting how when they were saying essential workers, this and that. And I was at the post office at the time when I was running routes every day still. And I was like, well, we're essential. If anyone's going to get sick and die, it's probably going to be the post office people. And then everyone seems to be fine, and they're showing up to work the next day. And I really started looking into it, like how crazy is all this?
Right.
And then I would go home, and so I was building it when you were talking about you took a risk and bought a business when all that was, well, you had bought the business before Corona was really a thing, right?
Right.
I mean, Amanda and I had bought a piece of property, and we were getting ready to start our house that we're in now. And Amanda was even like, should we be doing this? Like, this Corona thing might come out and it might get crazy. And I had not taken that risk for 3 years. And so I was like, I'm done waiting. We're building this thing. Like, we're already this far. This is purchased. I've drawn the plans. We're funding the loan right now. And so we ended up moving forward with it. Well, then where I'm tying this to is they would go back and forth on who's allowed to work, who's allowed not to work. Everyone's sick, wear a mask, do this. And you're buzzing around all the construction places in St. George that are packed with people working on houses.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like funding half of your ice cream stuff.
Yeah.
And then I would, you'd hear all the stuff at the post office, and then I would go to the house and work at the end of the day. After my other 3 jobs.
Right.
Then I'd go to the house and work all night, and there's people there the whole time. And I'm like, well, this can't be that crazy because everyone still seems to be working. And like I said, I figured if anyone was going to get it, it was going to be post office people first, and everything was okay. But it seems like where your supply chain gets broke is California. Right? And that was initially where it comes from.
I don't know exactly where it all comes from, but it's not, that's just the mystery. That's just in that process of I can't control where it comes from, so I don't worry about it type of a situation. So all I know is it's not on the shelves when I want to buy it.
Yeah.
And so whether or not I lived in Vegas and can go there every single day to go get my ice cream, then, it's just not there. So that was Yeah, I mean, everything was chaotic. Nobody knew what was going to happen. Nobody knew this. I mean, I remember when all that came out, and I think it was Governor Herbert that was in.
Yep.
I heard this, and I'm just like, you know what? He's going to come out and make this declaration that Utah's going to get shut down. And so, like, I immediately, because we were going through the toilet paper crisis at the time, I immediately went down to Smith's and was like, you know what? And I can't remember if milk was, there was an issue with milk at the time, something along those lines. I'm like, I'm going to go get some formula, some milk, some diapers, just whatever.
Yeah, 'cause you called me that night, I think. If this is the same night, you called me and you're like, hey, I'm going to get some stuff for your baby. Do you want to get stuff for my baby?
Exactly.
And I was like, dude, we just had the shower and I've got an entire closet stuffed of diapers.
Right.
I think we're okay.
Well, and I was calling other people, and I think it was milk. I think we were having an issue getting milk. And so I went down and I was just like, I ended up washing Governor Herbert's address with the cashiers at Smith's. Because I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm not, with how many people, even the toilet paper thing, right? Me and Taylor had to go to Smith's when Smith's opened at 6 o'clock because we ran out of toilet paper. And it wasn't because we were going to buy 5,000 boxes. We just needed some. And so we had to go. And so we left our sleeping kids at home. We ended up putting the baby monitor up and calling one of our phones, leaving the other phone on, so just in case we heard something. And we had the phone on for 25 minutes while we were standing in front of Smith's, like, trying to go get food.
Jeez.
And so I forgot where I was going out with this. But anyway, it was just that type of crazy stuff that you just try to be prepared for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And as far as the ice cream business was concerned, you know, like I said, 2020 was great. There was no issues with supply chain being broke at the time.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think it's more, and we can just transition to just products in general, is it more people not working, people getting paid not to work? Is it Corona still shutting down some states? Is it people just scared of Corona and not going out? I mean, like, just from Alex Stout, like, where do you think this is like the supply chain and the issues are coming from?
All of the above.
Just everything?
Oh, yeah. So I remember reading some of the articles because you try to keep up on it, right?
Well, you do a lot better than I do.
And so I remember reading something that said that when people were getting assistance, they were getting assistance, and so it was equal to somebody making $30,000 to $35,000 a year. And so you're telling those people that, I mean, the workers of everything, that you can just stay home.
Right.
Well, and like, if you stay home, that's great because you're not spending fuel on getting to work. You're not fast food, you know, when you have to go out to eat. So there was all these different issues that way. And so I think on that instance, yes, you had people staying home. And then, you know, fast forward to today, well, why are we still having the same issues? Well, we've got, you know, the crazy Delta variant out there that's apparently the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
And you still have those people doing the same thing. Like, it never clicked on me because I wasn't taking unemployment. But when it finally clicked on me that the federal government was giving people an extra $300 a week.
I think it was $600
or was it
a week.
6?
Yeah.
So it was extra money. So people were filing unemployment with the state of Utah and with the federal government. And so they were getting, I was blown away.
Yeah.
I called Blake and was like, dude, can I fire myself
Right.
and go on unemployment? Like, is that a thing? And because, man, it would just be so nice. I wouldn't have all these headaches of running a business. I'd be able to just
so that's what people
hang
don't
out.
understand. How that works is when you file unemployment, I mean, it wraps in, I mean, without getting too deep into it, wraps into your employer, but your state, like, it's regulated state to state.
Mm-hmm.
When all of this happened, the Fed kicked in $600 a week on top of what the state was doing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, now you're getting, like you're saying, you're $2,400 a month just with the federal. I mean,
Right.
I wasn't even making that much.
No.
You know,
Yeah.
like, that's more than, well, and how they really screwed this up was if you lived in friggin' Kansas, you're getting $600 a week. If you live in New York, you're getting $600 a week. If you live in San Francisco, you're getting $600 a week. It didn't make any sense.
Right.
And I mean, not that I should be president, but it's like they should have been able to figure this out to where they could be like average and median income,
Right.
or even like, I don't know, make the people do a little bit of work and be like, this is what I need to live. This is what I need to take care of my kids,
Right.
Type of thing.
Well, and you think about that and you're like, what's astonishing to me is how many people are still okay with not working.
Yeah.
Like, that just blows my mind. And it's not even like a self-pride thing, but it's like, what are you going to do all day?
Right.
You can only play Xbox for so many hours. Yeah. And like, and it was kind of funky because in ice cream, we have a season. And so we're off for certain amounts of the year. And so I think it was November, December, January, February last year, we were off. I got so bored that I had to go. We had an old truck up on the ridge that I had to get running because I had to have something to do. Yeah. I was just driving myself crazy just sitting at home. Like, even if I'm dead tired, I can't go home and take a nap because I lay there and think about all the things I could be doing.
Right.
And so I don't understand the mindset.
I don't either.
People need to have pride in what they do. They need to have something. And so even if you're not getting paid for that, you have to have hobbies. You have to have something you go out and do. And just having these people trapped in their house, it's bizarre.
Well, it's the first pandemic, or first really illness, pandemic, epidemic, whatever you want to call it. It's the first time we've ever made healthy people stay home, not just the sick people. And so, no one knew how to deal with it. And then when they started supplementing money, well, and then so the next step was, hey, like, I have a restaurant and you shut me down, or, no one's coming in. I still have employees. I still have this. What do we do? So then they started kicking loans, is what they called it. It was a loan that could be forgiven if you followed their steps.
So free money.
So they were giving this stuff to business owners to try and supplement them to still pay. So it's like they're not on unemployment, right? Mm-hmm. They're not making $600 a week, but we're giving the business owner money to pay those people $200-$300
to stay working, to stay on the payroll.
Yeah, so they didn't go to unemployment and collect more.
Right.
And so it was like, who wouldn't have just gone to unemployment? It's the same thing. But now it's gotten to be where they're so comfortable. Or the other issue I think we have, and I mean, being a business owner, I don't love exploiting these things, but like paying people under the table.
Right.
So I know a handful of people right now that are collecting unemployment and they're just getting a check working from whoever,
right.
And in the construction world, that's huge right now. Just work under the table, have your boss expense it and cut you a check. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
And I don't blame people for that. You know what I mean?
It's not me, but I get how someone could do it.
When the stimulus checks were coming out, I sat there and thought, okay, I'm against this, but I'm not going to rip up a $1,400
It's not like
check.
You're going to send it back refused.
Right. So I mean, they're just, I get what they're saying, but it for me, it comes back to dude, you got to take pride and go do something.
Yeah.
And you got to have a skill, something that you can accumulate, because you're not going to get paid to play Xbox. There might be 5 people in the world that get paid to play Xbox.
Yeah.
And so you've got to have something that you can go do. And I just think nobody's paying attention to any of that. They're just like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to sit at home then.
Yeah.
And I just don't get how people live like that.
Oh, dude, I'd hang myself with dental floss.
And it makes sense why people are depressed. They don't have anything to do.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, it just gets to the point now that with where we're at, some states are still receiving extra money. And I don't get how we get over this without, and being the bad guy, I don't think is the right way to say it, but just kind of telling people dude, it's time to go back to work. We've got to figure this out. Because then on the flip side of that is you've got these employees that say, go to work, and they hate their job right now, they could leave and go get a job anywhere else in
Right.
St. George or wherever they're at. So it's if their boss pisses them off for the day, it's like, fine, I
Deuces.
quit.
Yeah.
I'm out. See ya. I'm gonna go get hired on the spot somewhere else.
With a sign-on bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where, I mean, I heard you say you go work at Arby's for $15 an hour. I'm down.
I'm telling you, dude. I'm so close to
I'm
doing
about
it.
there. I'm getting a part-time job this winter just because I need something to do. Plus, I mean, they're kind of paying some money now. So
I think Amanda would kill me because I already do too much, but I've driven home a few times and I drive past Arby's and I'm like, man, like I could get done with the store at 6, be over there at 6:30 and work to 10:30. That's 4 hours and $15. That's $60 a night. And I'm like, I've done all of this. And I'm like, man, $60 a night, do that, 4 times a week, another $250. I mean, dude, and I'm sitting there doing all these numbers and I'm like, maybe I should go do that.
right.
And I mean, really what I should be doing is putting that time into the business or being home, right? Yeah. Maybe for once.
Well, and then the other thing too, now that it's getting to the point, is like some states have stopped taking federal is it is the right word, assistance for that,
federal,
but the extra federal money. And so you've got some people living in some states, and now we're all connected with Facebook and everything, so you're able to see how other people in different parts of the country are dealing with it. And so there's still people that are going on lockdown that are staying home, and some people that are getting forced to go back to work because they're running out of money.
Yeah.
I mean, the last stimulus check was sent out months ago. So people are running out of money. Yeah. And if the government thinks that people can last off $1,400,
good luck.
Yeah. That's where it gets to the point where you're just kind of like, okay, everybody, where are you at? Like, let's get back to work and actually start taking pride in kind of ourselves and what we do.
So I saw a report, though, and I really need to go look it up so I can cite it. Mal, will you look this up if you can find it? It's like the unemployment, or how many jobs are available versus how many people are on unemployment, I think is what it was in the state of Utah. So it was like, even if every single person that was on unemployment went and got a job, there would still be 30% open jobs.
Well, they were
jobs available.
Yeah, they were stating job statistics for, I think it was August and September. There's more people leaving the workforce now. And I want to say it was in the millions of people that left the job force in either August or September. And that to me is, I'm like, okay, so those jobs are going unfulfilled. Like the stat I always hear is there's 10 million open jobs in the United States right now.
That's bananas.
And I'm like, I haven't heard of one person on the radio saying that they're going to pay less than $15 an hour.
Well, do you think this is how they push 15 minimum wage? Because that's what I keep going to. And the other thing I want to touch on before we move to the minimum wage, because I do want to get there.
Do you want this metric or this number?
So what is it?
This is as of January 15th.
Okay.
It says with over 80,000 jobs available in Utah, but only 57,000 prospective employees.
Yeah, so you're telling me there's 30,000 jobs still available if everybody gets off unemployment and gets a job, right? That's crazy.
Yeah,
correct. Yes,
that's crazy. And so where did this come from? So that's going back to that question. Like when we were in high school, when we were getting our jobs, our beginning jobs, our $7, $8 an hour jobs, like that was not. I don't think that was a thing. Like there wasn't hiring signs on every fast food place like there is now. Right. And so yeah, now the way that they're doing this is they're pushing. Oh, I was going to go back. So I had a thought, and I could be completely off base, but what do you think? I thought like the baby boomers are all now starting to like transition out of into retirement, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So do you think that that's causing or drives these numbers up at all? Because a lot of those people, I mean, I just don't know how many people are being born versus how many people are going into retirement. But, I don't know those numbers. But do you think that has a factor?
Well, and I think this is granted, I sell popsicles for a living.
Yeah,
so.
Part-time safe salesman guys.
Yeah,
so
I think it comes to the point where, like, if you look at how you raise Will, right? You want to give your kid a better life than you had.
Sure.
And so the old thing is like, Grandpa walked to school uphill both ways in the snow. Well, hopefully he gave his kid a better life, and hopefully he gave his kid a better life, and hopefully, kind of it trickles on down. So what's to say that whatever generation we're in right now, what's to say that families, dads, moms aren't keeping their kids home longer, paying for cars? How many high school kids are really going and getting jobs?
Yeah.
Compared to where we were right now. That's kind of what I'm thinking is how many,
So like those kids are not on unemployment.
They're just not
but
working.
they're not working.
Well, and it's amazing how like when you bring up a subject, how, it's almost like branches out like a tree, right? You can go into 500 different avenues on what's going on. And this goes back to like, how busy are kids right now? Like when we were in high school, if you wanted to, you could, what was the first? Football. Football started off the school year.
Yep.
And then you could transition into basketball. And then you could transition into baseball. That was the school year. There's no way that happens anymore.
Yeah.
Like there's kids that go to basketball. They stick with basketball. They got off-season training. They've got coaches. They've got all camps and all this kind of other crap they go to. So kids are busy enough. So I can easily see how kids are staying home. Kids have stuff to do. So mom and dad are supplementing. So I can see, okay, I guarantee that could be a thing. I don't think anybody's going to have a number to say that that's what it is. But I guarantee that could be an issue on why unemployment's the way it is, because we're expecting too much of kids now. All of a sudden, we've got to have...
Are we expecting too much, or are kids just softer when it comes to working?
Both. But like we're expecting some kids, when people were coming out of high school to go into the NBA, that was a big deal.
Sure.
Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, that was crazy. Now, how many high school games are getting kind of blown up, and how many high school people are we hearing that could jump college and go straight into the NBA? Or the other way around, like football to NFL, like all that kind of stuff. There's some high school games and high school prospective people that are signing on to colleges, and college games now are almost as big as the NFL. So how much are we expecting of kids now? Going back to shooting. Some of these guys, a lot of the national champions with shooting are all kids that are school age kids. There's one kid right now that's he's beating everybody, and it's not even funny. And he's going to college. So he goes to college 5 days a week, can't have his gun on campus, but comes home and practices, and he's beating the best in the world.
Wow.
So, what are we expecting from
kids? It's just not a focus for kids. Mm-mm. It's more extracurriculars. It's sit in the basement and play Xbox, and mom will take care of you.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just easier there, and
I'm not dogging Xbox, okay? Let's just get this straight. I play Xbox probably 2 nights a week, so I'm not dogging Xbox.
I still think of Ghost Recon all the time.
I know. I get my gaming in. I don't want anyone to be like, "Oh, this guy's shitting on freaking Xbox and playing games." That's not what I'm doing.
Well, and even thinking about, gosh, I forgot where I was going at with this.
Sorry.
But there's so many kids these days that just have so much going on. And you want the best for your kid, and with the technology and climate that we're in, why wouldn't you try to push your kid for the greatest? This is where conspiracy theories start to kind of make sense, but how many teenage kids want to be TikTok stars?
Yeah.
And how many people are just running around doing stupid crap on TikTok
trying to get views and likes
and I don't know if that's true, but if there's really people out there doing TikTok videos making millions of dollars a year, I can see how young people would want to be all about that.
Well, is that what NBA and NFL was to us?
Could be.
Yeah.
That's why we were playing basketball as much as we could.
Yeah.
Trying to see if we'd make it.
I knew I wasn't getting there, but Alex Stout with that sweet jumper, dude.
Oh, yeah. Never leaves, too. I can still do it.
It's like riding a bike.
Exactly. It's like riding a bike. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We've talked about kids, and you have a son, I have a son. You have a daughter too, but we talk about what do you pass on to your son, and how do you... I've had that thought a lot. We grew up, we weren't rich by any means. When my two older brothers were in school, my parents had money. I mean, they paid for, my dad got them a car, or they drove my dad's old car. They paid their gas. And my parents' deal was like a 3.5 and higher, or 3.0 and higher. They'll pay for your gas and your insurance. And cell phones weren't a thing back then. It was beepers, right? So Mike and Adam had a pager, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then my parents, I mean, I honestly don't have the answer. Maybe we need to bring my mom on here one day and get the answer. But it was probably because she was staying home more. But my mom worked all the time. Anyway, we started getting to the point where like Jason and I kind of started having to pay for those things.
Yeah.
That Mike and Adam didn't. And it slowly just kind of fell off to me because I was just the only one left at that point.
Right.
But I think about, so I was just trying to preference, I didn't have a crappy childhood. So,
of course.
So, but I think like, okay, comparing that to what you're saying about having your kid having a better life and a better childhood, and define better really, I guess, before we get into this, I'm talking just about financially based, period. That's all I'm talking about. As of right now, and things could change. I mean, I could not be able to work tomorrow for whatever reason, or Amanda could not be able to work tomorrow for whatever reason. Like, will financially have a more, you know what I'm trying, what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to formulate it in words that doesn't sound disrespectful.
Right.
But he'll have more
opportunities to be a kid than you did
because of the financial side of it.
Right.
Is that a good way to put it? Without, I'm not trying to trash anyone, but so I always think like, well, that's a good thing. Like that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to put your kid in a better position.
Right.
But with that said, what's all the stuff that I learned, working,
right,
having a full-time job, having, always trying to make money, always trying to do these things. And then not only that, like having ownership to the things that I could afford and I could buy, like that GoPed that I had, dude. Oh my gosh, dude. Rode that thing all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Took me 2 summers to save up to buy that thing. Mm-hmm. And so like I respected it.
Right.
And it is. I will argue that with anybody. It's different when you don't have to have those things and have ownership to it. Your respect towards that thing is different. Mm-hmm. And I think that translates when you get older.
Oh yeah.
And so how do you, I guess what's your thoughts? I know you don't have the answer either because we're both in the same spot, but like, how do you preference that to your kid of like, it's like you have to lie to them and tell them you don't have money, I guess. Like, how do you transfer that to your kid but still have them appreciate what they have?
Well, and the funniest story that my wife still kind of makes fun of me about is I still don't know how my dad made money. To this day, I had no idea what my dad did. Like, I knew he worked, and he worked a lot, but I never heard him talking about, oh, we just had this big deal come through. We're selling a bunch of rock. I sold a bunch of cars, whatever.
Yeah.
I still don't know where he came up with the money he did. My dad built a big, beautiful house. And being in an industry that I got paid for labor, I know my dad didn't save in labor costs enough to be able to pay off this big, beautiful house up on the hill.
Sure.
So, like, there's something fishy going on there that he didn't say. But I always remember my dad, and this is, I mean, in a roundabout way how I'm going to do it, but I was growing as a kid, like I was getting growth spurts, getting bigger, whatever. And so I always had to get new shoes. And so at the end, whenever we went out school shopping, like I had to get a new pair of shoes. Well, I remember coming home one day and my mom bought me some Fila's.
Dang.
And I thought I was pretty cool. And my dad was like, and it was almost like we had to sneak the shoes in past my dad because he was going to bust my chops about getting new Fila's. And I'm just like, dude, they're new Fila's. I need new shoes, man. And could he have bought me those and had no problem? Yes,
100%.
He could have. And he wouldn't even thought about it. But my dad was always the refill cups with soda because you saved a quarter.
Yeah.
Well, money saved is money earned, you know? And so he always had that thing to where, like, he would always save money. He would always go out for deals, you know? It's like, if you get a coupon, right, and you go, and it's buy one, get one free, when you go out to lunch with somebody, what's your thought? Is your friend getting lunch free?
Yeah.
Or are you both getting half off your lunch? Yeah. You know, that's kind of the perfect way of thinking about it. It's like, oh, today we're going to go out, but I got this coupon that makes yours half off. Yeah. You know what I mean?
You're welcome.
Yeah. I hooked you up.
Well, plus it was like wholly free shirts. Oh, he would always have like
marathon
these free
shirts. It was always marathon shirts.
He'd have holes in them. And he'd wear it. Then he'd have just like a Walmart set of jean shorts or whatever. Yep. So yeah, that's a good point. I mean, your dad definitely didn't put it out there that they had money at all. Like if you saw him in Walmart, you would never guess.
Well, and going back to the S10 story, right?
Yeah.
So my dad backed over a truck on a loader, blew out the door, the cab, the windshield. Well, and what would everybody's first thought be? Like, oh, I got to call insurance, got to get a new truck, all this kind of stuff. We drove that truck for 6 more months. Yeah. The only reason we took it off the road is because the cops got sick of pulling us over and told us to take it off the road.
I mean, he's like Ace Ventura it out the side of the door.
Well, the windshield wasn't in it, so we were just staring straight out the windshield. We had to put like our four-wheeling goggles on because the wind was blowing so hard. And so it was just stuff like that you decide what's important. Do you need the newest truck, the best wakeboarding boat? Like, how many payments do you need to have? Or like, what do you need to have to make your life worth living? And you know your kids see more than you think they do.
Sure.
You know, I remember multiple times of going out. We were taking the houseboat out to Lake Powell. And one of the things is like, if you're carrying a houseboat, you're going to blow trailer tires. And so my dad cussed in front of my little sister, and my little sister repeated it. And so there's this little girl who's like, son of a, you know?
Yeah.
And my dad kind of like stops what he was doing. He's like, probably shouldn't do that anymore. You know? And so like your kids see more than you think they do, but you need to just have a priority list of, okay, well, what's important to me? Do I need the latest and greatest vehicle? Do I need to have the best wakeboarding boat on the market? Like, you want to be able to provide those things for your kids, but at the same time, what are you showing them? Are you showing them that going into debt is fine and making all these payments is fine and you're not saving for the future? Because your kids are going to see, like, if you burst a water line in your house, flood your house, well, if you can't handle it and can't pay it, well, your kids are going to catch on to that. Yeah. Your kids are going to see that. You know, it's one of those things like from your past, if your parents come and ask you to help pay the bills, then okay, well, you know that you're not going to ask your kids for that.
Yeah.
So maybe not providing your kid with the newest truck out on the market. Maybe providing him with something less is the way to go. And so there is no right answers. But at the end of the day, you don't go and you don't live beyond. I guess living beyond your means is kind of the cheesiest way of saying it because we hear it from everything. But, I mean, do you need all these things? A vehicle gets you from A to B. So does it need to be the latest, greatest vehicle that you're paying $800 a month for? Or can you just get by with a regular vehicle?
I mean, let's say you can have that brand new truck and you pay cash for it, though.
Oh, yeah.
So then, I mean, so is that okay? And then you go then you just have to explain it to them? I mean, so that's the other side is like, we drove like, 89 Honda Civics? Like that's what my brothers drove. I drove an 87. I mean, the car was older than I was. And it's like, well, and I'm not saying I could go buy a brand new truck, but I'm just saying like we go get Amanda a new truck and then the kid's treating it like crap on the inside. Like, so is that where you explain this to them? Like, hey man, this is this. I guess that's what I think it's inevitable that they're going to see things. Well, like that. I'd never been on a houseboat till about a month ago.
Right.
And like you guys grew up with one.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, is there just the communication of that to have the kids understand or does it even matter?
Well, and at the end of the day, the thing with the houseboat is like, yeah, we may feel like we're spoiled with the houseboat, but I remember times going out to the lake thinking that you're going to have a good time. Well, we're going out to work on the houseboat.
Yeah.
You know? So there's stuff like that. And the reason I became a mechanic, and granted, my dad was a mechanic.
Yeah.
The reason I became a mechanic is because I couldn't get anybody to work on my car.
Yeah. Necessity.
And my dad wasn't going to do it for me. And so, like, in every vehicle that we ended up buying needed a tune-up for some odd reason, and it just sucked to do on these vehicles. And so you had to pay a bunch of money or do it yourself. So I learned how to do it myself.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the way to do it, is have your kids work for it. But then where do you plug in work with all the football practice and,
Exactly.
you know, weightlifting and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, we kind of had that. Like, I remember Mike working, and I'll probably butcher timelines because I was young.
Right.
But like, I remember Mike working. I remember he worked at like Little Caesars. He worked, like, he had little jobs. And Adam will probably cuss me for this. Not like he'd ever watch my podcast, but like, Adam. Like, I don't think Adam ever had a job in high school, but he was a 2-sport athlete. Right. He was doing camps. And I know he did camps to help with some things. And I think they may have paid him for it, or maybe they gave him the next camp free if he helped out with the younger kids. I don't know. I'm sure there was something worked out. But then, I mean, Jason worked a little bit. And then, I was working when I was pushing the lawnmower around when I was 9, like mowing people's lawns in our neighborhood. But I think my first like job that someone else like paid me regularly would have been like Staley Catering when I was 14. Mm-hmm. And so like I had kind of always had a job.
Right.
And like when you were talking about your shoes, I remember we like basketball was our thing, right? My dad pushed us all into baseball, so we all played baseball. I wanted to play basketball when I was younger, and then when I got older, I wanted to play football. And when I say older, I mean like middle school. Mm-hmm. And I remember we went into basketball. I had saved up like $50, I think. And we went into, my dad took us into Foot Locker. And we're picking out shoes, and he's going to like the cheaper stuff, right?
Right.
And so he grabs the cheaper ones. And me being a smart ass, I'm like, okay, Dad, well, those are, $39.99, whatever they were. And I was like, I brought $50 with me. So why don't we just get the Allen Iversons that are $89.99, like, and you spent the same thing?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, we're not going to do that. And I'm pretty sure my mom was there and we corrected it. And I still to this day have those Allen Iversons.
Yeah.
Like they're still in my closet. And I remember after I had got different basketball shoes, I used to just loosely tie them, and then I would just slip them on and off. And I remember my dad coming to me one day, and he's like, stop slipping those shoes on. You're going to wear them out, and I'm not buying you another pair. And I was like, Dad, you didn't pay for these.
Right.
And I'm sure he wanted to smack me, and he probably had every right to, but I don't know. I just think like people need to struggle to an extent to have learning experiences to be able to move forward in their life and be able to problem solve and have a little bit of stress and be able to react to things. I think it's all a part of life. Yeah. And so a lot of these kids go through now, or even when they were our age. I mean, there was definitely spoiled kids our age in high school that they never had to deal with anything. Mom and dad took care of everything.
Right.
And it's like, well, that's why you're not going to the next level, because someone in your house has gotten you out of every bit of trouble you've ever had.
Right. Well, and thinking about it with work and everything like that, when we would wake up and go to school, we'd go to school and for 8, however many hours we went to school, right? You get off and you go to work. And then you work until 7, 8 at night. And then it's, okay, well, we got to do homework. How many times with that schedule, it's like, dude, there's no days off. There's no hours off. You're just moving to the next thing. And so have we transitioned that into our life now to where we have a 9 to 5, we come home, we have a hustle that we try to do, and then we're going to sleep, or we hang out with our kids, then we're back into it. So how many people have that same thing? And it doesn't even need to be work. How many people are going to work, going and working hard at something like football practice, and then, but football only lasts a certain amount of time during the year. After that year is done, well, what are the kids doing? Are they just coming home and hanging out? Like, if they don't learn work ethic in something, they're not going to translate it to a job. And then with so many people that are just like, we've got to think about feelings and kids are special and all this kind of stuff. Like, well, you need to have them suffer, like you said, to a point. But suffering has almost become this taboo word that nobody wants to go through anymore. It's like, well, life's kind of hard. You need to learn how to earn $1.
Sure.
And if kids don't have a schedule kind of written out, I remember the best thing I remember from school was like when I graduated, I knew I was going to have free time because I didn't have to go to school, then go to work. Now I could just go to work.
Yeah.
And so that lasted for a little while, but then, obviously I'm the mechanic in the neighborhood, so everybody needs their car worked on and they want it for cheaper after hours.
Sure.
And so I don't think kids see that anymore. And I think kids need to learn how to make money. They need to learn how to respect what $1 is. Because even nowadays, I think there's a lot of adults that don't know how to respect $1. And if you don't know how to respect $1 as an adult, then how are you going to pass that along as a kid? And heck, I'm learning that now. Like there's still things that I'm learning right now that are helping me out with business, helping me out with this, that, and the other. That one of the biggest things that I've learned with business is trying to, if somebody comes and asks for a donation, what's a proper amount? Nobody really knows.
Yeah.
So like if you start throwing out like, oh, well, this is for a good cause. Girl has cancer. Like, they're doing this little get together thing. And so you're thinking like, okay, well, if I had $1,000 to give them, would I give them $1,000? And like, if you had it and it wouldn't make a dent, maybe that's okay. But if it would make a dent and you still give it to them anyway, you don't respect $1.
Yeah. You should probably reconsider.
Yeah. So there's certain things like that it goes back into everything in life. You can list out as a situation and react to it as a situation and situations only. But if you have a set of principles that you try to abide by, you've got to take a problem, and even a problem as simple as like handling situations with your kids, trying to make your kids better people. You got to plug it into this equation of like, okay, what are the steps I'm going to go through to make my kids somebody who's not annoying?
Yeah.
I think one of Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for life, in his first book, is, don't let your kids do something that make them undesirable to be around. That's totally the wrong way of wording it. But if you have the annoying kid, even growing up as toddlers, like in the phases that we're at, if your kid can't go to grandma's house and behave himself or go to a friend's house and behave himself, if you don't correct that now, what's he going to be like when he gets older? And so and we're creatures of habit. Everybody is, so if we get into the point where we're just looking at our phones all the time and kids are watching Disney movies for, 12 hours a day, well, that's going to kind of boil off into everything.
Sure.
And so you've got to just sit down, take a break from phones and figure out, okay, what's the best situation for my kids now and what's the best way for them to learn? Because, at the end of the day, you've got to respect $1. You've got to respect the things you have, or else you're not going to get more of those things.
I think that wraps that up pretty good.
Hey.
Put a bow on it, man.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I said, there's no right answer. But at the end of the day, if you try to and you got to almost take every day as a new challenge. One of the things I started thinking about lately, too, is if somebody wrote a history book on you, would your days be boring? So like let's see, what's today? October 21st. So if October 21st was written in the history books for Derick Legg, what would they say you got done? Because they're going to list out like, Derick got up this morning, he did this, like he got all this crap done, he made this amount of money.
I'm fairly boring.
Like what's going to do that? How did he provide a better life for his kid? How did he show love and affection to his wife? Like what type of things are they going to look at it in the history books? And I think the reason I've been starting to think that is like my days have just gotten to the point where they seem to be over too quick. I would love more hours in the day.
Sure.
I think everybody would.
Would you take more hours in the day or more days in the week?
I don't know. That's a tough question.
I got asked that the other day, dude. It stumped me.
Yeah, that's a tough question.
And I ultimately said more hours in the day.
Yeah, because even right now with selling ice cream, we can't sell ice cream when it's dark, and it's getting dark earlier.
I'm like, I can get more done in a day. I don't know if I'd get more done if I had extra days.
Right. And maybe if you had an extra day, maybe you can, if your attention span was 5 hours, you could go get something done in 5 hours and then still be able to do something else. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
But yeah, going into the history book, starting to think about that. I mean, maybe that helps motivate people to go get a job. If you go in there and start thinking like, okay, this day, like, yes, I did go to work, but what am I going to go home and do? You see and I don't know if it's a meme or a picture or something posted on Facebook, but it's like, how many people have iPhones, right? So they say iPhone 13 or whatever number we're on now is $1,000. Or if you take $1,000 and start a business, and then people say like, nope, don't want to start a business, but yes, I'll buy the iPhone. $100 to learn a new trade or $100 for drinks and dinner.
Yeah.
It's like no to one. Like you don't even think about it, right? Because you're just definitely going to go out and get drinks later, or we don't drink
the iPhone or
whatever, And so it comes back to, do you respect a dollar, and where does that dollar go for you? Do you start thinking about it's just money, or is it that's your time? If something costs $20 and you make $20 an hour, you got to start thinking of it as, what did I do to earn that? So that hour that you worked is an hour that you're giving to somebody else to buy that thing that you have. And when you really start, it gets really depressing when you start looking at that as a work week, and you're just like, hey, the first week of the month, I'm not making any money. That's going to half my mortgage. The second week, 3 days of my work week, all the money I made that week, it's going to my mortgage. The rest of it's probably going to go gas, groceries, whatever. And maybe the last 3 days of the month, I might make enough to put into savings. And so when you start thinking about how valuable your time is, and that's also a good thing to show your kids is
right.
Hey, I had to do this kind of stuff to get you a car. I had to work this amount of hours. The reason why I didn't come home until dinner time at 7:00 was because I was out working and I was able to buy you this.
Right.
Type of a stuff.
Have you seen that? There's a little story meme thing, and it says, it's old, but it says, this kid went and asked his dad, who was extremely successful, worked all the time, did, 20-hour days, whatever. He went up and asked his dad, and he said, "Hey, Dad, how much money do you make in an hour?" And the dad says, "I make $100 an hour." And I'm going to butcher the thing, but we'll get the point. I make $100 an hour. And then he turns back around and keeps talking on his phone. So the kid tugs on the dad again, turns around and says, "Hey, Dad, I was wondering if I could borrow $50. And the dad's like, "No, yada, yada. You can't, I'm not giving you $50. And so then he turns back around, starts talking on the phone. Kid tugs the dad again. And he says, "Dad, I just wanted $50 so I could buy a half hour of your time."
Yeah.
And I'm conscious of that, and it stays with me because I do work a lot. And I'm, whether it's, and I just categorize everything as work. Mm-hmm. But it's whether I'm delivering safes, I'm at the store, I'm doing holsters, if I have to cover a mailer route, doing a podcast, and it's I'm just taking my time away from home, I guess. Because I really work and then I'm home most of the time, but
right.
But I try to be conscious of that, because there are, tonight, there's gonna be multiple times by the time I get home, Will's already asleep.
Yeah.
And so I've seen Will for literally probably 15 seconds today.
Mm-hmm.
This morning when Amanda walked in, I was getting ready and she had him, and she's like, "Doesn't he have a cute sweater on?" I'm like, "Yes, he's got a cute sweater on." Yep. And then she's like, "All right, love you, we're leaving." That's literally as long as I've seen him today. And I know like I'm trying to put these hours in to try and build something for us, for him to have experiences at working, a little bit so I can kind of control some of those situations that he gets put in, so I can be there to help him through it so we can have that relationship. But yeah, at the same time, it's like you kind of have to do this to provide that. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
And like, I don't know if I'm doing it right or not, I guess. I'm asking for advice, Alex.
Well, and I think that's the everything in moderation, right? So work in moderation, family time in moderation. Like if you have too much family time, maybe you
need
know,
to be working.
Maybe you need to be working to provide something. And so that's where, you know, you hope you've explained enough to your kids or your wife or whoever that the things I go and do are not things that I'm trying to just go have me time on. The
Sure.
things I go and do is like if I'm sacrificing that time that I would have spent with you to try to provide something else, you know? And it was one thing my dad kind of, and I don't know if he taught me, but I think it was more like my dad taught by just doing things and
Like
you paid
you
attention,
observed it, yeah.
you know? And he just said, like, when you get married and have a family, you don't have friends anymore. Like, your wife is your friend. That's it. Like, you're hanging out with your wife. And so when people get together, I mean, you know this because it's how our relationship is. When we got together to do something, like that was our friend time. We were going to accomplish a task. And there was no boys' night out. There's no girls' night out. There's no, you know, I told my wife that I'm never going to do a boys' night out type of thing without you. If one person gets invited, we both get invited. And so when you have to separate and do different things, you try to do it to a point of saying, hey, I know what this puts on us. I know and I don't know if burden's the right way to saying it, but like, I know the stress that it puts on us of you having to handle the kids by yourself. And I think it's worth it for now. It's not always going to be that way. Like, I'm not always going to say, hey, Thursday nights, I'm planning a dude's night. We're going to go do something, you know? And so there is that, yes, if you work too hard and it takes away from family time, you could be that kid tugging on your dad trying to give him $50 for an hour or half an hour. Or if you figure out how to plan and schedule your day around things to where you can be home to be with your kids. You can be home and everything, every moment with your kids, like it goes back to they're paying attention to what you're doing. So like I pick my daughter up from school at 3 and I could easily just get in my truck, turn the music on and just cruise home. But if you sit there and ask her what happened, how was school? Well, I think she's going to pay attention to that. Yeah. And I think that's a way to get kind of back into it. That's a way your kids start to learn and understand and know that your dad truly cares. And the one thing is like, you know, you never know what your kids are thinking. And so I never, I was a dumb kid, so I never thought my dad really loved me. But then now as an adult and kind of looking back to the memories I have of him, I know my dad loved me because that's the way he showed affection. Yeah. It was by spending time with me, by the things we did together. And so, yeah, there is ways that you definitely go overboard with everything, but there is ways that I think it just comes down to communication with how your spouse feels, with how your kid feels. Make every moment worth it. Yeah. When they write your history book, is it going to go down to saying, hey, this day was worth it? I spent this time during the day, and it was as productive as I could make it. Or did I spend all day on Facebook yelling at people?
Yeah, I wished I did that more.
Yeah,
I wish I had time for that. I like to give you an example. On Monday, I believe it was Monday, I had a safe delivery first thing in the morning. So we normally try to get them done in the morning. Store opens up at noon, so I try to have all that out of the way before I really feel like I even start my day at the store. Right. So I'm like, I've worked a part-time job before I start my 6 or 7 hours of store time. But I went and I went and I delivered the safe, and then had talked to Amanda that morning, and she said that she was off, and she's kind of just hanging around the house while we were talking where I was getting ready. And so I went and delivered the safe, and my house was on the way back to the store. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to drop this trailer at the house so I don't have to pull this trailer around with me all day. So I swing over to the house, drop the trailer, and then it just hit me like, is there stuff at the store to do? 100%. Sorry to everyone that's still waiting on your holsters.
Right.
Because there's always something to do. And 99% of the time, I would have just dropped. I wouldn't even have went in. Like Amanda, well, she would have heard my truck, but other than that, she'd have no idea I was even there.
Yeah.
I'd have just dropped the trailer and bounced to the store. And it just kind of hit me like, dude, you've got a couple hours that you can go in and hang out with your wife and hang out with your kid. Mm-hmm. And so I consciously, it hit me like, dude, you have time to go do this.
Right.
Like, can holsters wait? Probably, And so I shut the truck off and I went in, and Amanda's like, oh, what are you doing? I was like, well, I should I be at the store? Maybe, but I've got like a couple hours. I can probably just hang out at the house.
Right.
And so I went and grabbed Will, and we sat and played and hung out. And not that I don't want to spend time with them, but when I do get moments like that to be able to spend time with them, it almost is like hooking me as much as I think it'd mean something to him. Mm-hmm. And I mean, kids to me was so foreign. I didn't even know if I wanted kids. Right. And the more time I spend with Will now, and he's getting older, he turns 1 next week.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so the more time I hang out with them, the more I'm like, okay, I can understand this. I can see why people do this. I can see what the point is. There would be a hole if he wasn't here, type of thing.
Right.
And I look forward to, when I get up in the morning to go see him. Like I said, probably 2 or 3 nights out of the week, I don't see him at night. Like, he's in bed before I get home. But it's like a bummer to me. I try to do everything I can to wrap it up to hurry and get home so I can see him before he goes to bed.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I never thought I'd be like that, because I've always just been work for most of my life.
Yeah, for as long as you can remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you hope that those instances are making an effort as far as growing your family, not just you having a good time.
Yeah.
Because that was the hardest thing with the ice cream business, is if we went from, as early as we could go out till dark, well, between that time, my kids are going to go to bed. So there was a lot of times while I was learning the ice cream business that I wasn't home. We were starting at 10 a.m., and there was times that we were still at the warehouse dealing with ice cream stuff at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And then I'd wake up and do it all over again. And it just got to the point where I'm just like, well, I've got to kind of adjust things and figure out how to actually not have my wife feel like she's a single parent.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, it gets to the point where you just hope that your kids, your wife, they understand that the things that you're doing. And you almost got to take this as a mental note too, because you can take pride in doing these things, but you've got to make sure you understand the sacrifices too. The sacrifices of you not being able to see your kids, the sacrifices of your wife not having you there to talk about their day or whatever.
Yeah, or vice versa.
Yeah,
she's
exactly.
working late and you're there with the kids. And I mean,
Yeah.
I've had that a few times. Amanda's really good about being there with Will. And I think she's very conscious about not leaving me with him. That's not what I mean, but not forcing me to have to be there because she's not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And so she always tries to go out of her way, plan her schedule, everything that she has. And if there is times where I need to be there because Will doesn't have daycare or doesn't have one of our parents with him, she's always like, well, I've got to go do this for a few hours. You're good. And more because I think she knows, in my mind, I have this internal battle that I should be working.
Right.
And so, I'm starting to make that switch of okay, it's okay to be home and hang out with your kid. It's all right. You know, every moment you're awake, you don't have to be working.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's been a big transition for me. And we've talked about kids a handful of times. I mean, you were into it well before I was. And I've always been terrified of it. And, you know, part of the podcast is something, it's like go back to your history book. It's like he'll have something that he could, like, if something ever happened to me, he would have like documented journal basically of me on a weekly podcast that he could go back and watch. And he could go back and look at, learn from my friends, learn from people we have on. And I'm like, I think that's cool. Like, I don't keep a journal, but like, this is basically a virtual journal for him.
Yeah. Speaking of stuff like that, I saw a video of my dad for the first time.
Huh.
It was crazy.
I bet.
And like, I don't feel emotion, so I think somebody that did would be
like, I'd probably cry
about it. But like, it was just my sister sent out a group text and was just like, you know, I don't know if you guys have had very many of these videos and stuff, because she had kids, at least one of her kids when my dad was around, and none of the other kids had any kids. And so my dad got to at least spend time with one grandkid. And so, yeah, we saw a video of it, and I was just like, oh, so that's what he sounded like. It was kind of cool to
kind of take you back.
See, and it's, just something just like this. And so if something ever happened, we'll know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because it's the same type of thing. It's like when we say prayers at night with Austin, it's, you know, and I don't know if I should feel weird saying this, but it's almost like, you know, please bless grandmas and grandpa. Yeah. And so I'm like, should I feel weird about that? You know, that it's just like both grandmas and grandpa, you know, but I don't know. I don't have feelings, so
yeah.
It just kind of works out that way.
I have a picture. So right before your dad passed, and everyone kind of knew he was going to pass, it was like it was almost like they scheduled out time for people to come be with him for a half hour or an hour.
Yeah.
And so I have a picture of him in his chair, and then Amanda and I on each side of him. And every now and then, for some reason, I come and moving is why I've seen it a few times now. So when we moved, I knew where it was in my old house office, and then it got packed.
All right.
And then I've come across it once, and I put it somewhere else, and then I come across it again. And yeah, it's kind of weird. It like kind of takes me back. And he was a shell of himself at that point. I mean, he was super skinny. But yeah, I know what you're saying. And it's like, I mean, there are things with my dad, like, and my mom was very good at taking pictures and videos and everything when we were younger, but there's just, well, I'll say this, and I don't know if he listens to this or not. My Uncle Scott on my dad's side, my dad's brother. So before my dad died, him and I had a broken relationship. And even with his family, like, I just didn't want to deal with it. Right. And so I'd kind of told all of them, like, look, like it's nothing really personal. Like, I'm just trying to live my life here.
Right.
Like, just stop. Like, I don't know. It sounds so jacked up to say out loud now, but I'm like, I told him, like, just quit contacting me. You know, like, I'm trying to live my life.
Yeah.
And then when my dad passed, we had the funeral, and I was really close. If I was close with any of my dad's siblings, it would have been my Uncle Scott, maybe my Uncle Rick, my Uncle Tim. Mm-hmm. And Scott ends up coming down. Adam had his hands full with the funeral. And Scott kind of, by the time he got down here, he was actually in the mountains hunting when it happened. And once they got signal to him, he came off the mountain, drove straight down here. And his whole focus was us. You know, my dad was remarried, for people that don't know. So there was kind of like another wife involved, that family. And when my Uncle Scott came down, it was support me and my family.
Right.
And that was his main focus, to make sure we were all okay and we had a part in everything. And I was still, even at that time, I didn't even know if I was going to go to the funeral. Like, I didn't want to see anybody. Amanda was she was in Portugal and Spain. And so, like, I was kind of home alone type of thing. Jason and I spent a lot of time together when it happened. And anyway, my Uncle Scott comes down, And I told Adam, I'm like, I don't want to see anybody. Like, if they want to come hang out with the family, like, just let me know and I'll excuse myself.
Right.
And he was like, dude, Uncle Scott and Uncle Rick, they just want to see you. They just want to just sit down and talk with you. Can you give them an hour? And so I was like, all right, dude, let's go. And part of my fear was I didn't know what had been talked about, about me. Because I know that there was a lot of misunderstanding between me and my dad and everyone. I didn't know the negativity that was going to come my way, and I just wanted to avoid it. And so when I sat down with Scott and Rick, I started kind of talking to Scott, and he kind of came over and hung out with me. And when I was a kid, I stayed with the three of them when I was 13 or 14. And so I kind of had a little bit of a relationship with them. And like I quickly realized that like he was who my dad was when I was younger. And like he had a lot of similarities of who my dad was. And so the funeral went, he actually had like a week and a half off. And so we had kind of talked and I was like, hey, why don't you just stick around here? Why don't you just stay here for a week? And he's like, if you're open to that, dude, I'm down. And so he actually stayed with Amanda and I for a week. And it was almost like you were saying that video, to me, it was like I saw all the positive things of who my dad was because they were so similar. And I mean, they even like look similar. It's kind of freaky.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah.
But yeah, like I had it's having that little bit of him in my Uncle Scott has like kind of helped me like get past the relationship I had with my dad, if that makes sense. Like, like I didn't need to heal. Like that's not the right word. Like I've always been okay with how it ended and how our relationship had kind of ended. But yeah, I don't know. I hope that one day this can be a positive thing, for your kids, my kids, Tyson's kids, everybody, that they can look back on and see all this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you think too, spending time with those family members, it's you get to let go of maybe the bad that you remember, because we're all trained to focus on bad stuff. We always remember the bad things that happen.
Yeah.
And so you get to the point spending time with family members, so you get to actually think about the good and start remembering all the cool things that happened. Because, at the end of the day, like, yeah, there was issues, but your dad was still a pretty cool dude.
Yeah.
Like we got to spend a lot of time with him, and he was a good guy.
Right.
We always liked it.
Well, and I never hated him. Luckily I was old enough that I kind of understood depression, bipolar, all these things he was diagnosed with. I understood that it wasn't him anymore.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so like I didn't take it personal that he was doing and saying what he was doing and saying.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing. I mean, we focused a lot about you and your story, but I mean, both of us, our dads have both passed away.
Yeah.
And I mean, most people are going to have their dads pass away, but when it happens when you're in your 20s,
right, before kids show up
different.
And stuff like that. So, yeah, you don't get to see and I guess, both of our dads are gone, so you don't get to like ask them any questions like, hey, why did you do this to me when I was a kid?
Right.
Like, I thought that was really messed up. And your dad would just laugh and be like, because you were a dumb kid. That's why I did it.
You'll get it one day.
And so, we're just kind of, I guess we're kind of just making this up as we go along. And I think that's the one thing that, you hear that as a kid, you think that all these adults have things figured out. And then when you get to be an adult, you realize, like, no, everybody's just making crap up as they go along.
They're trying to figure it out, too.
I mean, everybody's as crazy as we think it is. I mean, you think of all these people we put on pedestals, and, they're all just as crazy, just trying to figure out life just like we all are. And I think that's what's ultimately, like, the sooner you can realize not to, like, hold people on such pedestals, and I'm talking, like, celebrities, politicians, all that other kind of stuff, the sooner you actually can figure out what you want to do with life and actually focus on people that you are in your life right now. So, for example, like if you totally got rid of Instagram and Facebook or Twitter, whatever space, you're on, who would be the people in your life you would talk about, think about, you know, and deal with on a daily basis?
Yeah.
You know, so those are the most important people in your life. And so you want to make sure you have good relationships with all those people.
Yeah. Something that's really important to me, because I was the same way. I mean, my mom and my dad were the coolest people ever, and no one's even close to as cool as they are. Like growing up, that was always my mentality. They were the best looking. They were always made the right decisions. They knew everything, right?
Oh yeah, your dad was invincible. Your dad could beat up my dad. Type of a story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's very important to me that Will understands that, like, I am extremely not perfect. I mean, I make mistakes. I do things wrong. I have to learn from it. I'm still struggling. Like, all that stuff is important to me, that he understands that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I mean, yeah, dude, I mean, if you want to think your dad's the coolest person ever, that's fine. But at the same time, you need to understand that, like, you don't have to have it all figured out when you're that age or when you're younger, or everyone makes mistakes, everyone's struggling, everyone's learning. Like, it's all part of growing up. And I think that's one thing that our generation kind of missed on was, like, our grandparents, and I'll just speak for myself, because I'm sure everyone's family is different, but it's like our grandparents, I felt like, had it together. My parents were still trying to figure it out, and I looked at them as like they had it figured out.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think that it's important for kids to understand that. And I have these talks with people now in our 30s that they're like, man, I'm just struggling, and I did this, and I thought I was getting ahead of the curve, and then this happens. And I'm like, yeah, that's supposed to happen.
Right.
You're supposed to have struggles.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's like there's so much depression now, I think, because of that. It's like, it's okay. You're supposed to struggle. You're supposed to have problems. And once you figure that problem out, guess what? You're probably just going to have another problem.
Exactly.
But it's fine. That's what it's about.
Well, and it goes into how we escape from this world, because this kind of goes into, like, the problem with social media, right? Is like, you follow all these people on TikTok or like podcasts or whatever you're talking to them about, and you start to think, like, the only time that you escape from your life and go into this fantasy land, this social media world, you only see people's good stuff.
Yeah.
You only see the positive aspects of
And
things.
the parts that
You don't realize that, like, I guarantee, Colin, who's a good example, like, if LeBron James is, like, sleeping at night and a bird flies into his window, like, he's got to deal with stuff like that, breaks his window. Like, so he's dealing with stuff just like you
Right.
are. If a water line breaks at your favorite politician's house or celebrity's house, well, they've got to deal with it just like you are. So, like, if those things happen to you, or, like, those people are raising kids and they don't listen to them, well, they've got to be a dad just like you're going to be a dad. So maybe focusing on your life sucks because something happened, like something, not bad or good. Well, it happens to everybody.
right.
So all you can do is just, okay, well, what's the next scenario? What do I have to do to make this better?
I had a reel, I think is what they're called. I had a reel come across mine, and it was a famous singer, a female singer. And she was like, the thing that bugs me the most about my husband. And it was a picture of clothes on the ground. And it was like dirty clothes on the ground.
Right.
And then it flashed another one. It was all dirty clothes on the ground. And it flashed another one. It was like dirty clothes on the ground. And it just, like what you're saying, it just kind of made me laugh. I'm like, yeah, these people are just people like we are.
Oh, yeah.
And like when my wife's like, I don't understand when you're like, so my wife goes to bed before I do the majority of the time. And so I'm usually going in the room in the dark, whatever. And so when I take my dirty clothes, I just throw them on the ground. Like,
Right.
and like, even though our dirty clothes is like in our closet, it's like a totally separate room from my bedroom. I'm like, I'll just throw them on the ground. I'll get them later.
Pick them up in the morning.
Yeah, which rarely happens. but so my wife's, I don't know if passive aggressiveness is the right way to put it. So I walked in our room one day, and the laundry basket is now sitting next to my bed. So it sits on my side of the bed now. And I don't know if it's helped because there's still times I pick my clothes up off the ground and throw it in the basket, but I don't know, it just makes me laugh. I'm like, that's her way of telling me like, dude, quit throwing your clothes on the ground. And then I see stuff like these celebrities that I'm like, well, that's what she's dealing with too. I don't know. It just makes me laugh because that's my problem.
Well, and you hope what it ends up coming down to is it kind of grounds people back to reality. And it's like, okay, well, maybe you should just try to focus on you. Try to write that history book in the right way to where you can accomplish something that you feel better about. And maybe it helps with your depression. Maybe it helps you be a better dad. Maybe it helps you just with something when you realize that everybody's got issues.
Better employee and better boss, better.
Oh, yeah, because you never know when an opportunity is going to come up that is really going to be something that changes your kid's life and how you deal with them. It might be an opportunity that comes up with something to help you out financially, or it might be something you never know what it is. Like, I mean, the best opportunity that I can think of off the top of my head is I wasn't even thinking about buying the ice cream business at the time. So the ice cream business came up when I was thinking about doing like a mobile, I guess not even a mobile, like a mobile fountain drink truck. Because, like, how many times do we go to Maverick and get food in the morning? You know what I mean? And get
extremely
a soda.
often.
Oh, yeah. So I'm like, what if one of those trucks showed up? So anyway, long story short is, like, I knew the ice cream man, and so I called him asking him for ideas. Well, an opportunity came up, and I seized on the opportunity. So it's one of those things that, I mean, and that's just an example of an opportunity, but if you can figure out how to seize on those opportunities and not think that you're just living in this depression fantasy Facebook land, not everybody's going to be a TikTok star making millions of dollars. Yeah. Some people need to go to work.
Yeah. One thing I want to hit on with that, and I've thought about this a lot lately, when people talk about taking a risk, and like buying a business would be a bigger risk than what I'm kind of talking about, but taking a risk with anything, maybe switching jobs or let's just say buying a business, people need to understand that they look at this risk like it's a make or break you type of thing. And the majority of the time it's not. So like, let's just say the safe store, I jump into that. I've got a lot of money sunk into the safe store. I've got a lot of overhead I've paid the last 3 years. I've got, all these things, all these risks I've taken, leases. Like at the end of the day, it's like, what's the worst thing that could happen? I mean, I lose the business. I can't fund it. I can't, the place catches fire. You know what I mean? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? And then what? Like, what's so hard to start over about that?
Right.
And, or the ice cream business. Say like Corona ends up shutting down everyone that makes ice cream and now you got no ice cream to sell.
All the ice cream melts. I mean, that's a tragedy.
Yeah. But it's like people think about these risks that they're going to take and they're so catastrophic and it'll change how your life is going to be lived and everyone's going to view you for the rest of your life. And it's just not the case.
Right.
The majority of the time I'm like, and I'm very cautious. I think my upbringing and everything I had to work for made me more cautious than I should have been. And I didn't like risks. I was going to take risks. I don't like change. I don't like any of that. And I've realized, especially being an entrepreneur, owning small businesses, you have to. It's part of it.
Yeah. And
even taking risks. And one I've talked to a girl recently is like going to college. She's like, I've got a scholarship and I want to do this. And I feel dumb if I don't go to college and do this. And I'm like, okay, well, like, let's just break it down. Like, say you go to college, maybe you hate it. You go through college, maybe you end up with a degree, maybe you don't. What if you don't go to college? Well, then you go get a job. What if that job fails? And I'm like walking her through this whole thing and I'm like, okay, so you just adjust. And I'm like, you think that this one decision, college is a big deal, don't get me wrong. But like for some people it is. I'm actually not a believer in college, but like my wife had to go to college to do what she does. So like in that instance, I get it. But I tried to just explain to her, like, it doesn't really matter. Like this is not going to break who you are. This is not going to bring like eternal damnation on you from this one. But people get in their heads, and that's what it is. And I've had to learn it just by doing it. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. And if you can count on yourself and you've got people around you that you can take advice from, people need to take more risks in life, I guess is the easy way to put everything I just said.
Well, yeah, and people need to be aware of what those risks are. I mean, holy crap, like talking about risks, what are the risks that you die in a car accident? What are the risks that you do this? What are the risks that you do that? Like, we take risks every single day. We're just at a level of comfort with some of those risks.
Sure, that's a good way to put it.
And so, I mean, the whole risk situation goes back to, okay, well, why are we still on lockdown with Corona then? Because we take a risk all the time. Do you know how many people die on elevators? Quite a bit, but I don't think about that whenever I get on an elevator.
Sure.
You know, like we start talking about, well, one death is too many. Well, yeah, I agree.
Sure.
But at the same time, like people need to get to the 40th floor of a building sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, risk is definitely something that people need to be more aware of. But then I think there's also a stat out there somewhere that says that if you have to file bankruptcy, your credit can rebound within a few years.
Yeah.
Or so, you
it's
know,
like 4 years.
Yeah, and you could be back to doing what you want to do. And it's like, okay, well, if you make the right decisions with taking that risk, the worst that's going to happen is bankruptcy. And so, like, there's rules and things that are in place that allow you to take those risks, but also realize that some people just focus on the negative and they don't focus on like, okay, well, if this happens, I have a safety net. And one of the safety nets is, okay, I lose everything and I have to start over. It's like, okay, well, if you're at a point that you can lose everything, start over, great. That doesn't mean that you need to go take out a second mortgage on your house to buy a ski boat.
Yeah, there's still dumb decisions.
Yeah, exactly. But if you think that you have an idea on something that can happen, try it. Because there wasn't a safe store in town until you created a safe store.
Yeah.
And so, like, there wasn't really a lot of people to talk to in St. George about, hey, how well do you think a safe store would do in town? No, you took the risk. You decided, you know, what would happen if I couldn't do it. And then, boom, you blossomed into what you are now.
So when I did that store, my answer was, what's the worst thing that could happen? I end up losing a lease and I have safes to sell and make some money back.
Right.
So I was like, well, it's funny that you bring up the bankruptcy thing because I actually had this conversation with your Uncle Keith.
Yeah, that's where I got it from.
Yeah,
too.
and he went through that whole thing. And because I think I just mentioned something to him. I mean, I've only spent maybe 2 or 3 interactions with him, but there was one time he was telling me, I'm sure I was talking about buying a house or something with homes. And he's like, so what are you scared of?
Right.
And growing up, for me, I don't know about you, and I think it's a generational thing, like bankruptcy is terrifying. Dude, you file bankruptcy, you're wrecked. Like, you're going to end up homeless on the street.
People are going to make fun of you and stuff like that.
You'll never get a loan again.
Right.
And it's like, no, dude, you go through this, and maybe I'm not the guy to speak on it. I've never filed bankruptcy, but he just kind of broke it all down where he's like, okay, you do this. You can't pay for it. You lose it. You have to file bankruptcy. You know, worst at the end of, you know, the worst and the worst and the worst, then you have to file bankruptcy. Then what? 4 years later, you buy a house again.
Exactly.
And he's like, so you've been stressing about this for 2 years. You could have already have failed and been halfway to doing it again.
Right.
And I was like, dang, dude, like, I guess I've never really thought about that.
Or you could have been 2 years into paying for a nice, big, beautiful house that might have allowed more options and more opportunities for, you know,
Exactly.
Who knows?
Exactly.
If you don't take the step, I mean, it's this is probably a dumb thing to bring up, but like Michael Jordan's like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Sure.
Right? So if you don't take the shot, who knows if you're going to make it or not?
Nobody.
Exactly. So you got to take the shot and risk and bet on yourself. It's really betting on yourself to see if you have the right work ethic for it or not.
Sure.
Because if I was to tell somebody, hey, see that popsicle that's right there? I can sell a lot of those and make some money. People are like, you're crazy. Okay, you don't know how many people like think that the ice cream business does not make any money. Like, the ice cream business makes money.
Sure.
I mean, I've been doing it for 2 years, so it's obviously paying my bills.
Yeah, I mean,
and
you
that's
don't
what
have,
I'm
like,
happy with.
4 homes in Mexico yet, but
Right. And so you look at that and you're just like, anybody can do anything. It just depends on if you have an idea on and if you're willing to work hard enough to make that idea successful.
yeah.
And if you can live with that and you can hustle enough to make that idea successful, that's what risk is. You take your risk, you try to work and bet on yourself to make that happen, and hopefully that's something that your kids can look back at, and that's how you teach your kids how to be good people.
Yeah, the other side of that, and something I've been doing a lot of listening to different people and reading about, is your being comfortable, your comfort zone. The world today is built to make you comfortable. We've had technology advances, we've had, inventions, all these things. Pretty much everything has been made at some point or another to make somebody comfortable. And I'll just say it right here. Like, if you're comfortable in everything that you do, and you're in your comfort zone all the time, I guarantee you don't have shit to show for it.
Mm-hmm.
If you stay in your comfort zone and your goal is to be in your comfort zone, I would love to talk to you at me, Derick Legg. Like, I go back to this because I have felt like most of my life with working and doing different things. I'm sure we've had this conversation. I talked to multiple friends about it. Like, I've always felt like I've just pushed a brick wall. I've pushed a brick wall. I've pushed a brick wall. Like, I'm always struggling to get to the next thing, and I'm struggling to get to the next thing. Well, you put it to me once. Gosh, I'm probably going to butcher it now. You said, do you remember this? What you said to me about this?
I don't know.
You said, I take the hardest things in the worst moments and try to make them work. Or you said something to me like that, because we were building a house, having a baby, got a puppy, opened a new retail store. Like, I did all of that in the span of like 8 months.
Right.
And you put it to me something like that. That's how I took it anyway. But
well, and I think I just described it as like, dude, you realize all the things you're stressed about are all self-induced?
Sure.
Yeah. And I'm just like, okay. So
Yeah.
they're under your control if they're all self-induced.
Right. But I think subconsciously I do that to pull me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
To push myself and push myself and push myself. So I've always felt like I'm always pushing, and I have this like major resistance against me. And I was actually having this conversation on my deck of my 5,000 plus square foot home with probably the best view in southern Utah, grilling freaking $30 filet mignons. Mm-hmm. and I was having this conversation, and it hit me, dude. This is like a month ago. Like, it hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I've not even taken the time to like look around to see where being out of my comfort zone, to see where, pushing myself I've been so blinded by this block wall in front of me that I've pushed against for so long that I haven't even like stopped to look around to see where I'm at.
Right.
And I don't know if it's a good thing or not. Like, I don't have the answer to that, but to my point, being in your comfort zone, having hot water, having AC,
having a grocery store you can go buy food.
Yeah, having shoes.
It's great.
All these things. It's like these things, and some things are great. I like having shoes, but putting yourself in your comfort zone is not pushing you to be any better.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and that's something that some of the things that scared me to death is getting out of my comfort zone.
Sure. It's supposed to.
Like, I look at that, and it has kept me from doing so many things that it's almost terrifying for me to think about. Because, like, I'll bring these things up, and I don't think I would be professional in any way with these things, but I really like woodworking and making things. But the first thing I ever gave to somebody, I couldn't be in the room when they opened it because I made it for them. I thought, and I hated it. I thought it looked like crap. And he still uses it to this day and thinks it's the coolest thing in the world. Like, I've made my mom a few things, and that one thing was pretty dope that I made my mom, the little cutting board. It was pretty sweet. But there's things that I pick out on it that I'm just like, well, I could have done that better.
Yeah.
And there's things that I sit there and think about. I'm like, man, where would I have been at if I was able to get out my comfort zone and actually try things? And it's not even things to make me money. It's things that, like, where would my skill set be? Where would my knowledge be? Like, one of the things, for example, is I really like welding. And so I've thought about this, and when you get a Jeep, basically the only thing left on a Jeep after you're done screwing with it is like the body of the Jeep.
Yeah.
And so there's these things that require cutting brackets off and welding brackets on a Jeep. And I'm like, I know how to weld. I know what to look for in a weld. I know how to I know what I'm looking for, and I know how to do it. But I'm comfortable letting somebody else do it. And I'm comfortable, and I shouldn't say I'm comfortable letting somebody else do it. I'm comfortable thinking about it and not doing it is the right way to put it. And so, and that also kind of terrifies me, because I'm just like, well, maybe you'd have a cooler Jeep if you just got out of your comfort zone and learned something.
Maybe you'd have a sweet front door like I got that you built me.
And the crazy thing is like, I don't do any of that stuff for myself because I'm out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And then there's something that, like, having somebody like you say, like, hey, I know you can do this. Let's just do it. And then I just respond. My comfort zone is taking orders from somebody and then coming up with an idea and figuring out a problem.
Interesting.
And so, like, my comfort zone is like being number two. If I had somebody above me that was making all the decisions and say, hey, this is the progression that I want this business to go, this particular thing to go, I'm the guy. I am totally in my comfort zone doing whatever I need to do. Out of my comfort zone, I'm number one. I'm making the decisions, trying to do this, that, and the other. Because, and so it doesn't keep me up at night because I like to sleep and I don't have a problem with that. But those are some of the thoughts that run through my head, is just like, dude, if you just stepped out of your comfort zone and just tried something new, like learning Spanish. I took it in school, went on a mission doing it. I always thought I spoke like an idiot, and I never wanted to try. And so I have never done it, because part of me being comfortable is saying, I don't speak Spanish, bro.
Yeah.
And I've been able to survive off of my Spanish encounters by doing that. So who knows where I'd be right now? Maybe I'd be translating for somebody down at the hospital and helping their life be better because they can't speak Spanish and I can translate to somebody. Maybe I'd be doing something else. Maybe, getting back to, like, maybe I'd be fabricating for a race car team if I took chances on myself and learned how to build things and trust my welding skills. Maybe I'd be at a cabinet shop making beautiful cabinets and wood art pieces and stuff like that.
You definitely have a knack for it. Like, anyone that's been at my house, that's when people be like, dude, this door is cool. First thing I say, I'm like, yeah, dude, Alex and I built this.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, dude, I basically drew it up and Alex built it.
And that was my comfort zone. That was me saying, like, okay, well, Derick has this thing he wants me to build. We do it this way. And it doesn't take, let's just do it.
Yeah.
Because, like, I trust my skill. I trust myself enough to do it for you.
Right. Isn't that funny?
And maybe that just kind of, I don't know, maybe it all just doesn't make sense. But it's like, and one of the things that makes me really uncomfortable is wasting money. And so when I had you buying all the stuff to make the door, I'm like,
that was different.
Well, dude, all I got to do is provide a grinding disc and some welding wire, and I'm good to go.
Yeah.
And sure enough, a big, beautiful door comes out of it.
Right.
So, yeah, taking a risk on yourself is just so underrated.
But, I mean, if this was explained to you when you were younger, do you think that would have changed?
No, because I was a young, dumb kid.
See, that's where I'm like, I wish someone would explain this to me. I wish someone would have told me, like, dude, you're supposed to be uncomfortable. You're supposed to take risks. You're supposed to do this. And I think society by design doesn't do that.
Right.
I think you're supposed to, go to grade school. You're supposed to go to college. You're supposed to get a 9 to 5. You're supposed to, you're supposed to be comfortable. You're supposed to shoot to be comfortable. You're supposed to retire. You're supposed to do these things.
Right.
And I disagree with all of it. And I'm 32 years old. I disagree with all of it.
The craziest story I just heard was that, so last year all the teachers were basically off, right, for COVID stuff. There's a school district in Virginia that's calling, they just, everybody, and I don't know how this works for other places, but we just had fall break for our schools, so I imagine they have something similar to that, right? They called off an extra 3 days and said it was for the mental health of the employees of the school district.
Because they're not used to having to go back to work.
They're not used to working. And you're just like, wait a second, didn't school start in like August? So you guys have been working for 60 days? And like, right, we're in Utah looking at something like this and thinking, okay, there might be something else that's some other situation, some other circumstances that might call that. But I'm like, you're going to take 3 days off from your job?
Sign me up.
Being comfortable,
I just got the boat going, dude. I'll go fishing for 3 days.
Yeah, it's these guys are outside of their comfort zone because they haven't worked for, a year and a half.
Hard.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure things are very hard, but yeah, that kind of stuff just blows my mind, being out of your comfort zone. I mean, there's guys that I fight with on the ice cream truck, and I'm just like, hey, you've got to get out of the idea that you're just a dumb ice cream man. Because people kind of look at you like, oh, he's just a poor ice cream man.
Yeah, you try adding up freaking $1.25, 75
cents, taking 20
$3.25.
And that's the hardest thing we do, obviously, right?
Sure.
But like, I've talked to people, and I'm just like, you got to get over that, because the craziest thing I've seen in mindset and being comfortable is, if you're comfortable, you're just going to drive around in an air-conditioned van and not sell. But when you actually get to open the door and try to like look at people and talk to people, that's being uncomfortable. Like, if that's something you don't like, you're not going to make any sales. And happy people make happy sales. And if you're uncomfortable, you're not happy. And so I've actually seen people that have made that change by just saying, dude, I'm the ice cream man. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to love it. And they go out there and they just start killing it. Like, all of a sudden, you're able to find more people. You're able to BS with people. You're able to just get this quick bond with somebody while they're buying an ice cream bar from you. And it just creates more and more sales. And then you're just hungry for more.
Yeah.
And so I wish being comfortable or being uncomfortable and seeing the success from being uncomfortable was more natural to people,
right?
And and what it was more like, when people see it, I don't even know what the right word is, but more like other people feel it, and you get that connection, and you can hold on to that connection for longer. Because if people learned how to hold on to that connection for longer, I think a lot of more people would be successful. But I mean, how easy is it to just go back into your comfort zone and just say, no, I don't want to do any of this. I mean, working's uncomfortable. How many people now have gone to the point where they're like, I don't want to work anymore?
Yeah, they need mental health days.
Yeah, exactly. They need to stay home and hang out because, the kids are too much.
Yeah, I two things that helped me out was, and I've always been, relationships have always meant something to me my whole life. My dad really instilled that into me. To this day, people come up to me and tell me, the positive relationships and the positive interactions they had with my dad. And two things I think people can do if you want to get out of your comfort zone, or you're feeling that slump, or you're feeling that, two easy things. One, it'll put in me, I'm very social. I talk a lot. Go talk to a stranger. Mm-hmm. Go find someone in the grocery store, find someone wherever, and ask them how they're doing. Say hi, just have an interaction with a stranger. And I've done that before. I mean, when I was younger, before I was married, I would often find people that I didn't know, and I would just be like, hey, how's it going? And a lot of times you'll catch people off guard and they're kind of weird about it. But anyway, so you can do that. The second thing, it's a lot easier to do, and it's by yourself, and you don't have to put anyone else in it. Take a cold shower.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of your comfort zone. I don't know about you, but the times that I've not had hot water in the mornings for whatever reason, I have a lot different day. I'm more aware. I don't know if positive's the right word because I'm a little pissed that I had to take a cold shower. But, you know, I mean, it just changes. It changes you. And there's actually a ton of science behind it. It's like the popular thing now to do ice baths.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's part of it. That's I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to get into it, but there's like Wim Hof. I don't know if people follow him. Like, he's the Iceman. Oh, yeah. I mean, he does like crazy frozen lake, frozen ocean swims and stuff. There's I want to say it's Tony Robbins. I think it's Tony Robbins. I could be wrong. He has like a 4x4 foot like ice bath pool type thing at his house that he just jumps in.
Yeah.
And it's like deep enough to where he can submerge himself because he's a big dude.
Oh, yeah.
But he just has like a little, that's the only reason it's there for is for him to like take a cold plunge, however you want to put it. So yeah, people, if you're in your comfort zone, you're probably not super productive.
Right.
And if you are, great, maybe you have it figured out. You know, if you're the most productive dude you've ever met and you're super comfortable doing what you're doing, let's bring you on the podcast. You can tell us the secret because I'd love to know.
Yeah, tell us how you're gonna, take Social Security when you're, 65 and they're bankrupt and everything.
Exactly.
That's the thing that's kind of pushed me out of my comfort zone and trying to like make something more of myself is like looking at it and thinking, dude, these guys on Social Security and stuff right now, they're not making enough money to survive. I mean,
right.
We had a guy that lived next to us, Carl. He was just in number 2 and he just kind of hung out and didn't really do anything all day and just complained about how the grass was cut and living off of Social Security. And I was just kind of like, well, do you want to be like Carl?
Yeah.
Or do you want to actually go make something of yourself? And
your 9 to 5, be comfortable, get Social Security, and cross your fingers you have some type of retirement fund.
Yeah.
And dude, I'm not betting on that. I'm not betting on any of that.
No, I'm not either. But yeah, taking a cold shower is one of those things that like haven't figured out how to do yet because I'm a real wimp with water. But dude, I'm a CrossFitter now.
Oh, that's right.
So cold baths and stuff, I've started looking into that.
Dude, Amanda's done it a handful of times when she was training for marathons and things like that.
Well, and I heard you get like all the health benefits and stuff that they say from it, like muscle soreness and
it's recovery. It speeds up your recovery.
Oh yeah,
and I'm saying I don't know the science behind it, but I know there's a lot.
And so I sit there and wonder, and it's like, and this kind of touches on something else too, but like, how many of us are quick to like diagnose ourselves on WebMD that we have cancer when it could just be a headache?
Yeah.
How many of us try to like take natural remedies for things? And I'm not thinking like you need to be, putting sniffing salts or whatever.
Burning sage.
Or whatever, I'm just thinking like, how many of us don't do things that are like in our control and we just say, hey, we're going to just accept that, that I need to take a pill for this. Like, this is the reason why I'm feeling the way that I am. Instead of saying, and I guess this is also getting out of your comfort zone, taking ownership of how you're feeling, whether or not you're feeling mentally fatigued or just, whatever. And you need your 3 days in November for mental awareness, because you're a teacher in Virginia. But like, it's just interesting to me kind of, looking into different things like that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, dude, we're coming up on 3 hours, so.
Are we really?
Yeah, I tell everyone, dude, every time we get in here, it's like this goes so fast.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I'm used to it now.
Right.
But like the first couple ones we did, like, and we have a clock in here now. Before I had the clock, I'd be like, all right, let's wrap it up. And then I would check my phone and I'm like, oh, geez, we're like 2 hours in.
Wow.
And like the first one was 3 hours, I believe. We've had a couple 3 hour ones.
Well, and to like, because I still think of things to talk about too. Because like I don't ever get to have this exercise of like talking, like I had them in.
I guess we need to go to lunch more often.
Well, and it's even stuff like that there's not even enough time to think
Yeah.
about your ideas. And I was doing that through Facebook comments. If you ever remember like seeing me go to war with somebody in Facebook comments and try to like express my ideas and stuff like that. And I've always been kind of interested on like, because dude, in my truck when I'm listening to a podcast, I think I'm the smartest dude in the room because like I'm the only guy here, right?
Yeah.
But I've always kind of wondered like what my ideas and stuff were. And so it's just another thing on your comfort zone, right?
Sure.
And so yeah, it's interesting that we've gone 3 hours on this already, and it's, man, I don't feel like we've talked about a lot. But
Well, that's what I'd say, dude. Every time we do this, I mean, we went through a handful of things, but we moved through a lot of them quick at first.
Yeah.
And then we kind of started diving in. But I mean, I've had multiple people. We've crossed off one thing.
yeah,
I've had a dozen topics, and I have one thing we talked about, and then we just got down some conversation, and that's the point of the podcast for me,
right.
is to have just a conversation. The majority, if not all, the guests have been like, "What do we talk about? What do you want to talk about?" Or like Michelle Tanner we brought on, and it was kind of like, "Hey, the elections are coming up." She kind of aligns with what I stand for. She can go fight for our voice. So we kind of had a direction with that. But the majority of the people, it's like we kind of, for lack of better terms, like I kind of get in here, we kind of loosen up, we kind of get some of the backstory out of the way, and then we just go.
That's one thing I was kind of, because I listened to that one on the way home from Vegas today, and I was kind of interested in that because like she does stand for a lot of the stuff that I stand for as well. But the one thing that I kind of remember is like, and this is kind of an interesting question, but like, is her voice going to be enough?
Yeah.
And like that's another thing that's kind of scary is like with everything that's going on government related. And I believe in 100% of what she's saying about like how we need to be locally involved because you never know when we're going to turn into something crazy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you always wonder like where does that political, that desire, that need to come from? Because like what she was saying was public service. And I'm just like, dude, those guys get crapped on so much. And like she sounds like she's got it together.
Sure. I mean, I just let her go because I'm like, you know more about this than I do.
Yeah, she sounds awesome. And I've just barely started to follow this kind of stuff. And it makes me wonder, like, is her voice going to be enough?
Well, that's why opening up, the first thing I said was like, yeah, but is one person going to change anything?
And that's what I wonder. Is like, so do we have to go find somebody else? Like,
Yeah.
That whole...
Maybe it's you.
Oh, dude, I don't know if I could do it. I'm terrified enough. This is another comfort zone thing. I'm terrified enough of, did I make sense talking about things on here? Or did I just ramble on like a
People
lunatic?
can be like, what did he talk about?
I'd be like, that freaking Alex Stout, he doesn't know anything. He just talked in a big giant circle.
No, the first few ones I felt like that when I was on, and when I did Jefferson Rogers' podcast, which was the first one I'd ever done.
Yeah.
And I was like, gosh, I hope I made sense. I hope people aren't going to be like, man, that was a dud podcast that Derick Lade kid was on.
Yeah.
But it's all just, it's an entertainment thing. It's a, hey, dude, if we're bothering you, go to the next episode. If we're bothering you, look up Joe Rogan, go to Andy Frisella, go to one of these other guys.
Yeah, I've always kind of, you always want to like be able to talk to somebody that questions your ideas and like sees how things are happening. But it's just like, with Michelle and where she talked about some of the trolls on the internet. And I'm just sitting there thinking like, dude, I don't know if I could mentally handle somebody like calling me out on Facebook or something, like, I don't know. Like, I think I could, but that's one thing. I've been so laid back in my life that any opposition or criticism that I've taken it personal. And I've tried to, I've told you this, I've tried to like seek out conflict now.
Yeah.
To try to have an exercise of,
Sure.
And that's me getting out of my comfort zone, right? I try to not pick fights, but like try not to back down if somebody's pushing you around.
Yeah,
just to see how I would handle it.
Not pick fights, but just be in opposition for something you believe in.
Yeah. And that's where, yeah, dude, running for political office would be the ultimate way of testing that theory.
Well, my big things to ask her was like, does one person matter? Let's get you on city council. Then what?
Right.
You know, old Mr. Cox up there, he comes and tells us we have to do something. Do we? You know, can St. George say no? Can the mayor and the city council say no? And so those were some things I had written down that I went over with her.
Well, that's one thing I thought about too, and where we could go with this too is, I took this stance when all of this stuff was coming down that like I didn't want to mess with the problem. I think I took you to Vegas one day with me and I made you wear a mask because I'm like, I don't want to screw with this. Let's just do it. And so like listening
and the whole way down, I was like, this is bull ass.
and so like I started thinking about it and I'm just like, okay, these guys have come out and made these demands and said these things, but have they followed through on any of it? Like is the business, whoever runs business licensing or whoever runs, you know, whoever's in control of mask mandates and stuff, are they going to come to your door? Like the military's not going to come shut you down.
Right.
So just live your life.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you're going out there, if you're not breaking the law, if you're just trying to do something, people are going to leave you alone. And that's where these unconstitutional orders and stuff that have come down, that's where I'm just kind of like, okay, a lot of what these guys are saying is just smoke. Like nothing's going to follow through with this. I mean, people get all up in an uproar about stuff, but like that's the one thing from your pod that kind of clued me back into it was listening to that podcast with you and Michelle, and I'm just like, it's totally right. Like we just need to just not listen to what they're saying.
Yeah.
And just say, no, we're not going to stand for this, and here's why. But the important thing is being able to articulate why we're not doing it.
That's what I was going to say. So many people, and this is the popular thing to say, that we will not comply.
Right.
And it's like, okay, like that's fine. Go ahead and say that. But you need to have like a stance behind it. Yeah. Is that the right way to say it? Like, and she did. That's what I really liked about it. She went from one thing to another and talked about it all.
And the one thing I'd want to ask her is like, because one of the issues I think that for political wise is I think people comply the most when they don't have the time to deal with the consequences, if that makes sense. So if something comes down and people just say the mask mandates in place or restrictions on restaurants are in place, well, being controlled by fear, one of the fearful things is like, okay, well, if something like that happens, do I have the time to deal with the repercussions? That's the category I fall into. Mm-hmm. Is like, I don't want to deal with it. And so that's something I'd ask her is like, what would be a constructive way of not fighting back, but resisting. Resisting. Kind of sounds dumb to say that, but resisting in a way that would be constructive, because the government's too big right now as it is to just, if the IRS sends you something saying, hey, you need to pay this because you have back taxes or something, they give you 30 days to pay it. Yeah. But it's probably going to take you 60 days to figure out what the hell it even is.
Yeah.
So
they're pulling it out of your bank account at that point.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then you're fighting to get it back. And so that's where I wonder, like, what would she tell to people that don't have the time to just deal with it? That are people like me and you that are just so wrapped up in everything we're doing every day that it's like, where do you find the time to deal with these new problems?
Well, that's why having her on, I think, don't get me wrong, I don't have like this huge audience, but having her on, and if one person sees it, if two people see it, if people can, if you have questions for her, we said it, like, go ahead and message her. We have some people in the comments that are commenting stuff, and she's interacting with them, and
that's cool.
And it's like, I don't know. I feel like having her on, we're putting a lot of resources in kind of pushing her message out. But where you and I stand, I feel like we have to have her. And I told her that when we shut this thing down. I was like, I just appreciate you standing up and doing it, because Well, one, so I don't have to, but
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
but it's
So I
like,
can
so I don't have
keep
to run
going.
for city council, but
Right.
yeah, I mean, I appreciate everything that she's doing. And
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I've got the ballot sitting on the counter right now.
Same.
And so it's like, well, I'm going to fill that out. I'm going to put her on it. And I mean, I hope she gets in.
Yeah.
And I hope that, you know, a lot of the stuff that she talked about where we can control what happens locally, if it comes to that point, that we do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think those instances become more real to us when we shut Facebook down. When we realize that, like, yeah, Joe Biden's in the White House, but like his day-to-day stuff, like if he just stays home and watches TV, it's not really going to affect me. Like,
Yeah.
you know, what gas prices do suck and that kind of affects me, but like there's more things that are going to be, as my kids start going to school, as you start building houses and stuff like that. That's where the city council kind of really comes into play, and local governments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so, like, I mean, I couldn't tell you for the life of me who our congressman is, or who at the time the governor was. Like, I didn't know.
Before Herbert was making mandates or.
Yeah, before he was ever doing anything and called to do something.
Yeah.
I had no idea who he was.
We have Senator Mike Lee.
I know he's not ours.
Well, yeah, he's Utah.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I
Mike
mean
Lee.
congressman, like the congressman
Oh.
over our area, because I know we have 2 senators and 2 congressmen, I think, or 3 or 4. Anyway,
Well,
that's
I know.
how much I follow.
That's why I
right?
told her in the beginning. I was like, so explain to me how this works.
Right. And so anyway, but like, yeah, you start to wonder, okay, well, what's really important? And when you shut off Facebook and stuff like that, well, it's your local school districts, because your kids are going to be going to school.
Yeah.
It's the mayor of the town. It's the whoever.
The police chief kneeling to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's stuff like that you start to think like, okay, as St. George grows, are we going to have people in there that's going to resist this, or?
And it grows by transplants, majority.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's
I mean,
not
that's
like
why we're
everybody that was
growing.
native to St. George is having a bunch of kids and they're staying here.
Right.
You know, we're having people move in. I mean, I think up at the subdivision, that's the majority of people that are moving up there. They either got hookups from the realtor that's buying up there, or they're, you know, sons and daughters of people who have built up there, or they're from California.
Yeah. I mean, the majority of my customers the last year have been not from Utah.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
Sure.
as long as people come up and they're able to have a conversation and not just jump to these conclusions about what we rednecks in Utah stand for, then
Yeah.
you know, we can figure something out. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's just, dude, if you can be nice and actually like be able to disagree and still be friendly with somebody,
Yeah.
I think that's all that matters. I mean, Travis Jones says it best, you know, if you can be a good person and let somebody in when they have their blinker on, you're an okay person.
Yeah,
in my
you're
book.
all right.
I've heard him say that a ton of times, and it's always just kind of stuck with me.
Sure.
So
Well, I think it's wrap this thing up.
I like it.
We're hitting 3 hours right now, I believe. So,
Perfect. It was great.
oh, dude, this is fun.
Yeah, it was nice to actually have a conversation and kind of express ideas rather than just me yelling at the radio in my vehicle.
Well, I think what we're going to start doing is we still have a handful of guests lined up, but I think we're going to start kind of circling back, and if people want to come on for a second time,
Oh, cool.
we're going to kind of start working that in. So yeah, I mean, if you're open to it, we'll probably bring you back on down the road.
Yeah, it just depends on if the commenters are nice to me.
They're going to be like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, he's a goofball.
Dude, it's funny. Social media stuff, it's we just got our Facebook back up and going. Instagram it's not, well, ours at least isn't super interactive. Like, there's not a lot of people commenting as far as questions and things that we can interact with. But TikTok, dude, we are blowing up on
What?
TikTok.
I don't even know what that is.
Dude, I didn't either until there was old Roadblock, old Cade Bynan.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he came on, talked a little bit about TikTok, and then Eros talked about TikTok. And I grabbed Mallory and I'm like, dude, you got to figure out what this TikTok thing's all about.
Oh,
and so she
geez.
made one, and she's posting the same clips on TikTok. And we have more followers and views and everything on TikTok than anything.
Well, that's cool. Well,
And-
and it goes back to, you know, whatever social media somebody's on. It's like we see the bad things because it's shared the most, but like if one person shares one thing, how many people see that from just one click of the share button?
Exactly.
So it's like the same thing with the podcast. If you see something that's great, share it, you know, and let people know what you're listening to. Because, I mean, what's the harm, dude? You listen to this for a couple hours and we suck. So then you stop listening.
That's what I mean,
You know?
dude. Go to Joe Rogan.
So, yeah. Anyway.
Dude, TikTok, we've had some really good guests. The one with Josh and Brittany is blowing up on TikTok.
That's cool.
We have one that, and I keep texting both of them. Like, did you guys see this? Did you guys see this? Because I think Brittany made a TikTok like to track how they did.
Oh, cool.
And I could be wrong, but I've texted her a few times. I checked it today. We're at 224,000 views on one of their clips,
Holy smokes.
and there's like 100 comments and 100 shares.
That's awesome.
I'm like, what the heck? Like, I don't even know that many people. You
Oh,
know?
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
That's crazy.
I can't keep track of people we went to high school with, let alone try to think about the scale of what that is.
Exactly. Well, I think they said that it just ticked over 1 billion users. Wow. Isn't that crazy?
That's nuts.
And I think Instagram's just over 1 billion
Wow.
and Facebook's under, I believe. But Instagram is not growing near the rate that TikTok is. And so they're
Interesting.
thinking TikTok will take over Instagram pretty soon. And dude, Gary Vee was right. Gary Vee was saying get on TikTok a long time ago. So he says follow the kids, dude. Whatever the kids are on, you got to follow it.
You got to do it.
But
Well, I don't do that stuff on my phone anymore, so I might have to download TikTok on my iPad and just do it at home.
yeah, I always make the excuse that I have Instagram and Facebook and all these things for my businesses and different things, but I mean, I would probably still have Instagram and Facebook. I probably
Right.
wouldn't have TikTok.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, dude, it's not like I always viewed it as like 16-year-old girls doing little goofy dances, and it's really not. There's all kinds of stuff on there.
Wow.
Like when Cade told me he was on it, I'm like, what business does a 6'4",
This
300
giant of a
pound,
man.
yeah, like biker
Yeah.
have on TikTok? And that's when I kind of was like, maybe we should look into this.
Wow. That's
But-
cool. Open your eyes to something new.
Yeah, dude. So we'll bring you on later. This has been fun.
Cool.
We've got a few guests lined up that'll be really good. I've been tried to be conscious of like just not bringing my buddies on and just like bullshitting the whole time.
Of course.
And so we've tried to mix it in, and I think we've done a really good job of it.
Oh, totally.
But yeah, guys, that's it. If you're still with us 3 hours down the road, you've either had a long drive or you really think Alex looks good. So if you're still here, leave us a comment, share the podcast, rate us on Apple. This thing is, I mean, we don't boost this. We don't really put any money into promoting this. So really, we're just growing by word of mouth and people sharing. And the guests that we bring on, we obviously gain their audience a lot of the time too. So please share it. Please comment. Please like. If you have any questions for me, you can reach me. My Instagram is Derick Leg. Facebook's Derick Leg. Weapon X Holsters, Southern Utah Safe and Vault. If you want to reach out to Alex, he's just Alex Stout.
Alex R. Stout. Alex Stout on Facebook.
And Fitness Ice Cream.
We're the white ice cream trucks.
Yep. It's a small world.
It is.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.